All right, folks, it's Mullins Music and Memories once again with Mark Lee, your host here of this particular show on IBM TV. As always, glad to have you folks involved. We just finished having a wonderful conversation over at the radio show with Mark Lee that involves some folks from the theater world, and they're doing a production of Turning 15, which deals with the civil rights movement of the 60s and all of that. So that was a fascinating conversation with three of the people involved with that production. So definitely looking forward to hearing folks and what they're going to be involved in. So definitely that was an amazing conversation and looking forward to having some guests here on Mullins Music and Memories. So we've got all kinds of great conversations. I know a lot of folks are concerned about what's happening in the world of definitely the world of politics, and we just elected the new president, Mr. Biden. And of course, we still got that stubborn person that doesn't want to leave office and all, but he has lost the election. So he just needs to go ahead and accept that defeat and go ahead and move on. At least that's my thoughts. And I know some others may disagree. And then, of course, we've got our vice president elect, Kamala Harris. And I know a lot of folks are very much excited about that and the fact that that's going on. But of course, we're also dealing with a lot of folks dealing with hard times with the economy, with all the other things that are happening in our world. A lot of us are facing personal economy struggles as well as dealing with the pandemic, as well as just dealing with a lot of other issues, including racial unrest and things of that nature. So there are a number of things that are going on in the world. Yours truly, Mark Lee, is glad to be here with the show and glad to have all kinds of guests. And I'm going to bring up one of my first guests for today. We just had a conversation about the arts on the other show, and we're going to bring up Miss Precious and see what she's got going on as well. So definitely glad to have her involved, and she's involved in the world of arts here in this area. And we just finished doing a big event, which is the Business Leadership Conference, which I know that she's good friends and involved with Sherelle James and Sherelle James' husband, and has been involved with their podcast and a number of other things that are happening in the world. So we're doing our great show here. And like I said, IBM TV was glad to be involved with some of the aspects of the Business Expo, and definitely other folks were involved as well. So definitely would love to hear from Precious some of her thoughts about the Business Leadership Conference, what she learned about the business world. And I know she's also been involved with I believe Jimmy Black and Everything Black and all of that, as well as just being involved in the world of arts. We actually met and found out after we had connected on this whole Black Business Expo through Hayti when she did a tremendous film and all of that was going on. So definitely would love to hear about her role in the world and what she's got going on in the art world. So glad to have you here, Precious. If you'll just share a little bit about your personal story, your journey into the arts, and then we'll go from there. And then might have one or two other guests that'll be joining us, and we'll just have like a roundtable discussion like we often do on our programs here. So love to hear a little bit more about your own road to being a filmmaker.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Glad to be here. Glad to be connected again. That was a lovely
Yes.
surprise.
Yes.
Yeah, so I really didn't get into the film community until I moved down here to North Carolina. I'm originally from New Jersey.
Mhm.
And although I had a background in communications and fine arts and media stuff, I never really dove into arts fully. You just say, oh, the student loans are due. Let me go ahead and just take this job so that way I can pay for everything. But it always stayed in the back of my mind. And then after moving here, my husband actually gave me time to say, hey, figure out what you want to do because you invested all this time into this and you're talented. So go ahead and try to figure out what you want to do. So I actually enrolled at Living Arts College
Mhm.
over by Wakefield. And originally I thought it was going to be film because I had written a script in undergrad and I fell in love with the audio equipment. So I
Oh, wow.
learned audio production engineering. And with that, I learned sound design and how to edit with Adobe and all the Adobe suite. And that's when my love for film was reignited because I went from just a spectator, just a writer, to actually being able to cut and produce and put things
Mhm.
together on my own and with other people that met as well. I went back into, regular work because you got to pay the bills.
Yes.
And some stuff happened where I just physically was not feeling it anymore. I said, you know what? I did not pay all this money to just work for somebody else and to just do this over and over again. And I was in a place where I was helping other people achieve their dreams. I was like, well, maybe I need to go ahead and achieve mine.
Right.
And so I left my job April 13th of 2018, had no idea what was next, but I took the leap. I met Annie Ross, who's another filmmaker in the area, and started working with her on her grief journeys. And then from there, it just kept spiraling. All these opportunities kept coming. And then October of that year, I actually had a heart attack. I was only
Oh, wow.
32 at the time. And I was supposed to meet a friend that day. So I took out Marco Polo on my phone and I just started talking to her through Marco Polo. And I went through all of the rehab and everything that you have to go through. And I started to look back and I said, you know what? I have all this footage. And then something just dropped in my mind, tell your story.
Right.
And it wasn't for clout. It wasn't for fame. It was just from the perspective of a young person having something that's typically set aside for older people to have. And the thought of somebody out there maybe needs to see this for encouragement for themselves, for prevention, anything. And so that's how it happened. And I made sure it was done in time for my birthday of 2019 and launched it, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And what are some of the lessons that you found that you learned in making this film? Because it is a message-oriented film that you would like more people to know. And also, how did you get connected with Sherelle James and her husband? Because I know that you're also involved in their
Yes.
world of doing podcasts and a number of other things also.
Yes. I learned that was my first film. Very first one. So I learned the art of telling the story through documentary and also through film. I consulted with some people around me that I knew and really just put all those skills together and kind of just focused on telling the story. At the core of anything that I do, whether it's marketing, branding, whatever, it's storytelling. So I focused on that and was able to kind of piece the the footage together and tell that story. As far as Sherelle and her husband Derek, I actually met them through another project that I was working on that has evolved into something else. And from that, we formed a relationship. And now I'm helping her and him with their More Than I Do podcast and some other things that they're working on as well.
Gotcha. It definitely sounds like you've been doing a lot in all of that realm. How important, because it's something we were talking about earlier, because I had on my other show that I do on Mondays, the guys from Turning 15, which is a play about the March on Washington, I mean, the March on Selma and all of that. And they were talking about how they turned that into a production to share a little bit about history and to get that message out there. So, in that sense, what are some of the messages that you are hoping that your current film or the film that you've won these awards, because you won some awards with your film, is going to share, as well as some of the things that you would like to have? How would you like to use the arts as a tool for making messages and for getting activism? Because to me, art and activism are oftentimes connected.
Yes, that's in essence in anything that I do, whether it's music driven, culture driven, or even just health driven. I have that message of activism in there. And with this film, it's called Chapter 32, From Tragedy to Triumph. And within this film, it's essentially telling you, number one, you're never too young for anything to knock on your door and just to expect the unexpected. But then also in going through the tragedy, you can still triumph with it. You can still experience joy through it. You can still learn what you need to learn to continue to live a full life after it and honor everything that you've gone through. Use what you need and take it forward with you as you move on to whatever else that you're going to do. Now, as far as the other projects that I'm working on, you might laugh, but I'm actually a K-pop fan. Those of you who don't know what that is Korean pop music. And I have some other channels that are dedicated to that, but we've actually been looking at the culture and how when you listen to it, you hear influences of R&B and soul and gospel and how all of that fits into that realm. So we're working on a project to kind of shine a light on all of the Black creatives that work in
Mm-hmm.
K-pop, known and unknown. A lot of people don't know Teddy Riley was in K-pop for 7 years and
Oh, I
revived
did
his
not know that.
career over in Korea. Yeah, he revived his career in Korea while people were listening to his old New Jack Swing here in America. So it's a lot of people that work behind the scenes to help make that happen. So we wanted to shine a light to all of those creatives and show how, there is appropriation at times, but there's also appreciation as well.
And you were talking about the fact that you suffered this, a heart attack at a very young age and everything. What are some of the things that you learned, and what are some of the warning messages that you give to people about dealing with this? Because, like I said, that's something that, your average 30-year-old, definitely not your average 20-year-old. I would even argue probably not your average 40-year-old. Now I'm in my late 50s, so it's probably something that I need to think about on a regular basis. But definitely it's something that young folks don't think about. But we've seen young folk get impacted and sometimes even
Mhm.
get impacted in very sharp ways. Like I'm thinking about Chadwick Bosewick and the fact that he lost his life to prostate cancer and everything, but he was a relatively young man. So how did this come about, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from this experience?
Well, my entire life, I've teetered on the plus size realm, and that was always the focus of my doctor's appointments, what I looked like, what I need to stop doing, what I need to start doing. And it was never really digging deeper into what those numbers looked like and why they were so astronomical and that they should not have been those numbers. And come to find out, I actually did have a genetic condition called hypercholesterolemia that runs on my dad's side of the family, which causes my cholesterol to stay at a higher level than a normal person's cholesterol. And typically, when you're treated for this condition, you're treated at a very young age. There's patients as young as 8 that are treated for this regularly. So it's one of those things where, had it been looked at and caught ahead of time, it's a possibility that I would not have had this heart attack. But at the same time, I am grateful that I am still here and able to be an advocate for that as well. So typically, when it comes to younger generations, you're just worried about, they're like, "Oh, you're too young for this to happen. It's not possible, or it's not something for you to worry about right now." No, you should put yourself first, know your numbers, and be an advocate for your health no matter what, because you never know what can happen. And that's something that I learned.
Wow, that's a very important lesson to learn and everything. What are some of the things or ways that you advocate to young people? Because a lot of times folks don't even think about this at particularly the 20s and the 30s, and I would even argue the teens, that these kind of activities in terms of health activities can happen in your life. So what are some of the ways that you're trying to use your platform to share this message, but also how you trying to just let folks know in general, like, are you going to schools, are you doing other things, but how are you actually trying to get the message out to?
In addition to the heart attack that I also have a skin condition called hidradenitis suppurativa. I was diagnosed with that when I was 13. Now, you would think at the height of puberty, you're thinking about all these other things. And now, on top of that, you have this weird skin condition that not a lot of people know about. So, I went through the whole teenage angst and anger of like, why do I have this? Why am I experiencing this? I don't want to be here anymore. All of that because the pain was that deep. So I am in groups and in forums with a lot of people that suffer from whether it's the heart condition or whether it's the skin condition. And I send a lot of encouragement to these people to let them know that your life is not over. Yes, you may be young in your 20s, 30s, teens, and you may not want to be experiencing this right now, but you can still have a full life with this condition. You are still here for a reason. That means you still have something to do. So while I'm still trying to figure out ways in which I can make that on a broader scale, I mean, I have spoken at the American Heart Association, I've been involved in little groups and forums, but I'd like to take that message on both the heart realm and also the skin condition realm and make that a little bit bigger. But I should mention also, for the skin condition, I did film a spot for them, and that's been circulating and getting out to people. So my goal ultimately, when I'm able to do so, in addition to the film, is to start a foundation in which I can help give back to these people who may be interested in film and the arts, but are not sure if they can do that because they feel a hindrance with their condition.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that you would have to do that kind of activism work. Did you get a chance at all to check any of the Black Expo that was going on last weekend? If so, what are some of the lessons that you learned from that business expo that you would like to share with people? Because I know I was really inspired by a number of the speakers, like Fran Harris, of course, like your business partner, Sherelle James, and her
Mhm.
husband, and of course, George Frazier, and a number of others. But I was just wondering if you got a chance to watch any of it, and also if you had a chance to tell us some of the people that have inspired you in your life in general, be that in the business community or be that in the arts community.
Mm. I will say I was preparing with Sherelle and Derek for most of the expo, so a lot of it was their stuff, and I'll do a little plug for them. They have a podcast called More Than I Do, in which they talk about their years in marriage and business. And one of the things I've learned, because I am also married and we are also both in the arts community as well, but learning how to navigate that business realm, because typically you have to separate your emotions from the actual, business side of things, and learning how to come back and forth from that is something that we didn't know how to do until we were able to watch them and see how they interact. And they've been able to do it for so long and successfully and help other people do it. So that was really instrumental in taking away key points for us moving forward. I also learned some of the ABCs of business and the little bits and pieces that I saw throughout the week, things that we should learn in the arts community, because typically with arts, it's liberal, it's free flowing, and the
Right.
business side of things gets left aside, or you try to find somebody else to do it for you instead of you actually sitting and knowing your business. I think for arts people in particular, know your ABCs of business. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you, because they may not do it correctly. They may not do it the way that you can, and they may mess you up.
That is very true. And it's
Yeah.
interesting that you said that because I know one of the things we've talked about on this show, as well as a number of other shows that I've been involved with, is the fact that it is called show business. But too often we're very good, meaning a lot of our artists, be that filmmakers, be that musicians, be that singers, actors, painters, a number of other the disciplines, they're very good at the show part. They're not necessarily good at the business part. So I would agree with you that we need to have folks, one, learn those skill sets because I think that everybody needs to know them. But even if you don't know them, find experts in those fields that do know those things and can share them with you. So definitely that's something that I think we need to have more of. So do you feel that way as well, that we don't have enough of our artist community that knows enough
Mhm.
about the business side of the arts? Because it is something that is a business in addition to a creative outlet. So what are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I've seen so many people that just want to grab and shoot. They just want to start filming and just start doing it. It's like, okay, well, do you have a plan for the entire film? Do you have a distribution plan? Do you have a marketing plan? Do you have a plan for your actors and the people that you're going to be talking to? What about your equipment? Are you renting it? Do you own it? What kind of equipment do you need for this shot? Do you have your shot list? So yes, the love and the passion for it is important, and knowing the story and just wanting to get it going is really important. But at the same time, take a step and a breather to plan to make sure that you're not in the middle of a shoot and you forget what you're supposed to be doing, or you're done and you're in post production and you can't go back because you didn't think ahead. So yeah, see the vision from the front to the end, and if you physically can't see it, employ a team around you, whether it's through bartering services, whether it's just through credits, whether it's just through providing them food and gas. Employ a team around you that you can trust, that can see the vision with you to help you bring it forth to life.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. We got to have a team, and you got to have more of these folks that are involved in your team and everything. How do you think we're doing in terms of teaching the arts in the school system? That was something else we were talking about on the radio show with Mark Lee, which is my other streaming program that I do here on IBM TV on Mondays and everything. But that's the conversation we were having with our theater folks, is the fact of sometimes we feel that there's not enough of the learning of the arts in our education system. But everybody has different opinions on that. I'd love to hear your perspective as to whether you think we're doing enough in that realm.
I don't think so. I know that when I first went away to college, my degree was in political science. And it was because I thought I was going to be some kind of business lawyer and I wanted to go into politics and whatnot. And then when I realized everything that was required of it, I said, no, 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 this is not it. And I found the love of communication. I said, this is what I want to do. I said, let me go ahead and go this route. Had I been exposed to that earlier, I would not have had to go through the hoops that I had to in order to get to where I am now. And think about it, when they talk about viable careers, they talk about finance, they talk about business, they talk about all these other things, but they don't talk about the arts careers. And
Right.
as we look at 2020 and what's happened, who are the ones that are benefiting from this lockdown? It's a lot of people in these arts careers, these graphics people, these
Right.
computer people, the video content creators, all these people who can work independently and on their own and don't need to be in an office or work underneath people are the ones that are providing services for everybody else who didn't know how to do these things. So I think it's really important to be well rounded in telling children, teenagers, whomever, what it is that they can be instead of just focusing on the traditionally successful careers.
Yeah, that's very true. That we have to be folks that are doing that on a regular basis, and unfortunately, that's one of the things we have is folks that don't think about these careers. Like I said, I know that the Business Expo used StreamYard, which I found out through a friend of mine, Sri Navasan, which is basically in my mind like a smaller version of Zoom. But a lot of folks didn't know about this platform, but it's actually based on the West Coast and is becoming a very popular platform for these kind
Mhm.
of virtual conferences and things of that nature. So a lot of folks are now learning about that. So we actually had Dana Bentz, who's one of their marketing people, on our show in the past edition. So she's definitely seeing a growth spurt that's going on using this platform. Definitely want to continue the conversation with you, Precious. And I've got one other guest who is an entrepreneur as well that I want to bring in as well. So I'm here to bring in Stephanie Espy into the conversation. So Stephanie, glad to see you join us and all. So definitely tell us a little bit about what you've got going on in your world, Stephanie. I know we connected through LinkedIn, and a lot of folks don't know about how that can be a powerful networking tool as well. And I know that you're doing a lot of work in the field of entrepreneurship. Precious is a young survivor of several different things that have gone on in her life, including the heart attack and a number of other things. But she is also a master creative and a master artist and a master businesswoman in my mind. So definitely consider her to be a new friend, both her and her husband, because I met them both at our Hayti Heritage Film Festival some time back. So I found them to be great folks. But I'd love to hear your story and some of the things that you're involved in.
Sure. Well, first of all, as I've been backstage listening to Precious, I'm just very proud of you for everything you talked about in terms of your health and battling your health and kind of sharing your battle with other people and helping them. I mean, that's all commendable. I'm in my 40s, and it's something that I think about all the time. So I appreciate you sharing that. And so I'm Stephanie, and my background is in engineering. And my passion is, again, I listen to Precious talk about art and her passion, how she found her passion. And I feel the same way in some respects about engineering and science and STEM fields. I feel like there's not always enough done early on to expose girls, particularly girls of color, into some of these very white male-dominated STEM areas. And so my passion in life is all about, how do I help girls understand what engineering is all about? How do I inspire them to pursue some of these very traditionally male-dominated roles? How do I share with them my passion for science and math, and just kind of get them to see that they can have a very fruitful career in a STEM field?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I agree. I've got some friends that have worked in different STEM fields, some here in North Carolina, where I'm based at, and where Precious is at, other parts of the country as well as the world. And I do agree that there's not enough people that are understanding that there are a lot of great women leaders in these STEM fields, a lot of great minority leaders, but sometimes they're swept under the rug. Me and Precious were just involved with a business leadership conference that was going on all week long here in the whole virtual space, but a lot of the speakers were from the North Carolina area, and a lot of them do come out of the field of STEM kind of related things. But I was just learning about some of these people for the first time this past week, because I didn't necessarily know them until this activity happened. And then I had Steve Rao, who's a friend of mine that's Indian American, who was always a big supporter of technology and all of that, talks about it a lot of times. We don't understand these fields that exist. So how do we get more people involved in STEM work? And what are the ways that you're trying to encourage more people to get involved in the STEM fields?
Well, schools are definitely one place, right? And so some schools are doing a fantastic job with exposing their students to different aspects of STEM. And then, I think the big issue is what happens post primary school. I think primary school is, there's not a lot of the focus in terms of research focuses on what happens post primary school. And that's the middle school years, particularly for girls who in primary school had an interest in STEM, had interest in math. In primary school, you're not necessarily taking hardcore tests. You're not having to go home and study for hours and hours a night. You're not doing research projects and things like that. That all starts to happen in middle school. And when that starts to happen, when you combine that with just that age group of going through puberty, for example, girls develop a whole lot of middle school. And then you have to factor in the cool factor of like just trying to make friends and trying to, and liking, other people and relationships, and trying to balance, all these different life things with your schoolwork and keeping up. That's when all of a sudden things that were okay in elementary school now are, oh, that's so hard. Oh, that requires too much time. Oh, I don't have time to study. Oh, I don't get it. And so it's how do we help them to balance all the things that happen in middle school? How do we help them to keep the interest that they had and maintain that interest? So in terms of the work that I do with STEM Gems, it's all about reaching middle school age girls and talking about all things they're going through, just having candid conversations with them about things they're experiencing in their life. And then also just continuously introducing them to careers they have never, ever, ever even heard of, never thought about, it's just awareness. It's really about awareness and about hands-on activities to help them understand. Oh, well, if I'm interested in electrical engineering, here's something that an activity that can sort of showcase what that career looks like. Here's numerous women in this career. Here's what they do. Here's how they impact the world. Here's how they make a difference in the world. Here's what money they can, they make. So that way it's like they can internalize that and they say, wow, never heard of this, never thought about that. But now that I've had this exposure, now that I've actually had a chance to talk with someone in this career path, my mind, you're opening up their minds a little bit more to walk down that path as well. So my work focuses on that particular age group, and then introducing them to careers that you're not going to really see on television all the time. You won't turn on any cable station and see, a lot of these careers. You may find some of them buried on Netflix. You may not read about them in any popular magazine. It's not, they're not celebrities, so to speak. So they're not in mainstream. You'll find depending on who you follow on social media, you could be following the career path of somebody in STEM, but just in mainstream media, it's not very popular. So if this information is not introduced proactively to this particular target, group of the next generation, then they could go their entire lives and not have known about these things. And I hear a lot of that from parents, who say, I wish I would have known, or no one ever, I never knew about that, or it was never introduced to me. Even Precious talked about how she had no idea about all the different career opportunities within communications until, much later in her life. So like she said, had she been introduced early on, perhaps she would have, had a different path to getting there. So I think that's really why it's so critically important. When you look at the numbers in terms of women, engineers and scientists make up less than 20% and of people earning bachelor's degrees in this area. And then we look at, specifically Black women, it's 3%. So 3% is just not acceptable to me. It's just unacceptable that only 3% of Black women are earning degrees in this space. And so what can I do as a woman in engineering, as a woman in STEM to, open up the doors, open up the minds of young people to, to have the option, and then they can choose, have a better way of choosing if you know what the options are, versus you just narrowing on the things that you see more commonly, or what's directly in front of you versus things that you're not seeing or exposed to, and what's directly, what's not in front of you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Who were some of the pioneers? And this is actually for both of you, but I'll start with you, Stephanie, and come to Precious. But who are some of the pioneers that you look to in engineering, in STEM fields, that are your personal role models and all of that? And what got you involved in the field of engineering? Like, was your parents or somebody involved in this field, or is it something that you decided that you wanted to do later in life as you just started researching careers? Because like you said, you're in your 40s now, but what led you down this path, and who are some of your personal role models?
Well, I definitely, credit my parents for a lot of it, because this is not by no means the norm, but my parents are both engineers. And they definitely, I wouldn't say they pushed me towards engineering, because they really didn't. What they did was they opened my eyes to the power of math and science. So more than anything, I had appreciation for math, appreciation for science from them, but they never said you're going to be engineer, or, and to be very honest, I knew they were engineers, but didn't quite know what they did, even though I knew they were engineers. So I didn't fully understand their jobs. So again, it wasn't sort of a mandated thing in my home, like you're going to do this, but it was more just like very subtle ways of introducing math and science into the home. My mom has a degree in chemical engineering. She also loves to cook. So it was things that she did in the kitchen. She loves to bake. So a lot of measuring, a lot of ratios goes into that. So because she loves it so much, that was always part of the conversation. She also loves to shop, and she loves to shop for a good discount, a good deal. So what is that? That's math, that's percents. So she was always really good at calculating, if I have this, this on sale for this much off, this percentage off, and then you have an additional coupon for this, and then you have this, what is it going to cost? And so just knowing how to do that sort of math just naturally, just in your head without a calculator, just thinking about that is something that, again, she sort of like initiated, so to speak. My father, electrical engineer, he has 3 daughters, 1 son, but his 2 oldest are daughters, my sister and I. And so before my brother was even born, but while he was so young, it was like, hey, girls, come out here and help me fix this car. Come out here and help me fix this. Come and help me. Let me show you this. Let me show you that, So we were the ones that were helping him fix things and building things and, putting things together, taking things apart. It wasn't just for the boys, so to speak. We learned to play chess growing up. That was something else that just kind of taught you critical thinking and logic and strategy. So it was just all the little things that we did naturally that, kind of eventually led to my, decision to pursue the career that I pursued. And then on top of that, I do have quite a few family members. My aunt is more notable. She is my dad's sister, and she has a PhD from MIT in electrical engineering, the first Black woman to get a PhD in electrical engineering from MIT. So she, growing up with her as my aunt, also was, again, wasn't very blatant, but it was but I did look up to her. I still do look up to her in terms of a role model. And there were the other women like Mae Jemison and, Sally Ride, and just, more notable women for the accomplishments that they made were also really inspiring to me. So it was a combination of definitely my parents at home and family members, but also, just people like Mae Jemison who still, resonates with me to this day as, for her achievements. So I think that's sort of how it happened. But again, in school, it was also the teachers because, I did enjoy humanities courses too. I was definitely more well-rounded, so to speak, and enjoy, English classes and reading and literature and things like that. But I was very excited about math. Like that was the class I looked forward to going to the most. I just liked how things came together, and I had teachers along the way that just made it exciting and interesting for me. So I think that also helped tremendously in terms of, deciding indefinitely, like, this is what I want to do, because a lot of girls have the interest, but what happens is that is not converted over to the choice. It's like, oh yeah, it's interesting. I like it. Yeah, I took this class or I did that program. And then they go choose a different path. And that's, everybody has to do what's best for them. But there's a disconnect between like the interest and the choice. So how do we better just, make sure that they have good experiences and they have good programming that excites them so much that they end up saying, this is what I want to do, versus like, oh yeah, this was cool. I enjoyed it, but I still want to go down this other path. And so there's that disconnect. And there's also just disconnect of just the lack of exposure, period, which then, of course, you'll never choose something that you have zero exposure to. So it's sort of two sort of challenges that I have to overcome is like continued repetitive exposure so that it becomes a choice, as well as, just exposure, period. One-time exposure is great, but it's not enough. It has to be continuous and repetitive, and, you have to do it all the time. You have to continue to work towards that. So that is a little bit about sort of what I believe to be true and how I try to interact with the girls that come into my programs. And also why I decided to write the STEM Gems book. We didn't talk about the book yet, but that is also that was sort of the initiator of all the programs, so to speak, to introduce girls to careers, but also to introduce girls to women in those careers who can, who share their stories so that they can hopefully inspire someone towards, you can read a little bit about oh yeah, that's interesting. That sounds really exciting. Never heard of it. Now I want to learn more. And that's the goal, is for them to read it, be excited by it, and want to learn more. And then maybe one day they'll be, we can get that gap, we can close that gap a little bit.
Yeah, we definitely need to close that gap. There's no doubt about that. As you were speaking and talking and everything, I actually was reflecting on my uncle's sister. So it's actually on his side of the family. He married my mother's sister. So he's my uncle by marriage and everything, but his sister Pinky, that's what we call her and everything. She was actually one of the early anesthesiologists, and she actually worked in DC in the hospital there and everything. And of course, she's retired, but she was actually one of the early ones. So I have seen people that have done fields that we don't necessarily think about, like the engineers, like the anesthesiologists, like folks like that. So a lot of times we don't think about these folks, and there are definitely folks that inspire us. I know that Precious has probably got some folks that inspire her, and I just came up because I'm always thinking of ways to connect people. That's part of what I do. That's part of like my life purpose, I think, is to network and connect people. So I've decided that Precious needs to make a film about Stephanie and the whole thing that's going on with her STEM gym program. So Precious, what do you think? I'm thinking that you need to make a film about Stephanie. So are you ready? Are you ready to do this?
Yes, and I have an all-female film crew that can help put that together too. Yes. We can do that. All women of color as well.
All right. So, who are some of the folks that inspire you as well? So, I'd love to hear Precious share a little bit about some of the folks that inspire her, and also talk about her company and what she's doing with her own company. So, I'd love to hear you share a little bit of your story in that sense of what Stephanie just did with some of your own inspirations.
Wow, Stephanie, first of all, thank you for your kind words earlier. And your journey is amazing as well. I would love to chat more about that too, because we're going to make a film now. So, yes, we have to chat. But I have a mixture of people. Obviously, first, my mom being a single mom and just seeing her resilience and resourcefulness, like that is the core of like who I am. If I don't know something, I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm going to go try to find out if I can learn it first. And if not, find out who I need to talk to so that way I can learn it from them. And I got a lot of that from her because she never gave up no matter what was thrown her way. And she's been thrown a lot. And the way that she raised me and my sister, this is one of my favorite women in this whole entire world. Aside from personal, I should also mention my dad too, because that's where I got the creative side from. He's an amazing singer. He's since passed, but the drive to essentially go into the arts and to make a name for myself and also to make a name for him, that's where that came from. It came from his drive. I have a shirt on right now, actually from Hey Tai, that has some people on it. So I have Spike Lee, obviously, for his originality and his ingenuity to kind of just say, you know what, forget everything that I've been taught and I've seen. I'm going to do it myself, my own way. And he forged his own path. And then also Ava. And Ava, I mean, it's popular, but the reason why is because at 31 or 32, she picked up a camera and essentially started to film. Now, yes, she had background and she had been in the realm, but to be able to be brave enough to pick it up and say, you know what, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it because I feel like I'm the one that has to get this across. I directly correlated with that because I did my first film at 32. So I wasn't, even though in the back of my mind it was, is it too late for me to get started in this career path? Seeing someone like her being able to be successful gave me the influence to say, you know what, I can do it too. Who says I can't? I'm just going to tell my story. I'm just going to focus on the basics. And I'm still getting there. I'm not saying I'm Ava, but I'm moving up there. And then locally, Mark, you actually met him, Ed Clark. He has been instrumental as a backer to make sure that we as young people are able to see our dreams come true. His goal, when we met him, we were just trying to see if we could use the space to film whatever we needed to film. And it turned into a wonderful relationship in which we all work together. We've started a collective. And the stuff that we've been able to produce in a short amount of time of knowing each other is just kismet. Like we were supposed to come together and do these things. So I'm really grateful for him and his mentorship, his advice. We call him Papa Vince because that's who he is to us. And there's a whole bunch of other people. Annie Ross for giving me my first time to be able to edit something. It started where I was just assisting her on set. And then in the middle of assisting her, she says, hey, my editor quit. Can you edit this? And me, not knowing anything, said, you know what? Yes, I can. Because I took that resourcefulness and learned everything I needed to learn to make sure to be able to edit. And the very first thing I edited aired on the People's Channel for Durham and Chapel Hill. How amazing is that? Like to be able to just talk, and it came from just a conversation, just to be able to network and just reach out to people. So that's one of the takeaways I want to tell people: network. Don't be afraid to reach out and talk and try something new because you never know what can come from it. Now, as far as my company, Sucha Lee Productions, I started that with my friend Andrea. She goes by Suchil. She's actually from Colombia. So the two of us came together. I call myself the eyes and she's the hands. And we do digital and print media, film and entertainment, and also brand management as well. And that's how I got in with Sherelle and Derek on their podcast. But in the midst of all that, we're creating a lot of different life art forms, whether it's film, whether it's music, whether it's editorial, whatever, just different ways to get different people's stories across, to tell different stories, to get different things out there that normally wouldn't be told because they're a woman or they're from here or they're from there and they're considered not interesting. We don't care about that. If the story deserves to be told, guess what? We're telling it. So another thing that I'm working on is Post in Black. Post in Black is by Made for More Entertainment and LTE Visions out in LA. I work with David Hunter Jr., his brother Daniel Hunter, and also Tatiana M. Johnson. They came together and formed Post in Black, which is essentially celebrating Black excellence behind the lens. So all these jobs that people don't know about that exist in Hollywood outside of being in front of the camera, like lighting, sound design, editing, key editing, all that stuff that gets kind of thrown away, but is essential in making sure that you see the finished product. We highlight those people that are behind the lens. We've spoken to Leander Sales, who's edited for Spike Lee. We've spoken to Shannon Baker Davis, who edited The Photograph by Issa Rae. We've spoken to James Hatcher, who did sound for the Olympics in Korea, the Winter Olympics. So we have all these dynamic people who you just pass by on the street regular that you don't know are doing these amazing things. And they're all people of color as well. So that's our goal, is to put them in the spotlight and to showcase and show people like, hey, there are jobs you can do. That quirkiness that you have, guess what? It fits great in this realm or this realm or this realm. And not to give up on your dreams of how you see yourself living your life and what you see yourself doing just because it doesn't seem logical.
Yep, thanks. Makes a lot of sense. One of the things I love to hear Stephanie's perception about this, because I know one of the shows that they've been talking about here on the IBM TV network is a show around artificial intelligence, AI, and things around that nature. And that seems to me that should be something that more of us should be getting engaged in. But I feel like we're not doing enough of that. And that's definitely something that is groundbreaking in the world. And a lot of folks are going to be using these tools and everything. And I actually went and saw that there was a whole platform that existed on the computer where you can actually create like some AI avatars, and it's actually like a free program that's better in my mind on your desktop versus your laptop. But it's like a platform that you can create. I wish I could think of the name of it off the top of my head, but there's like these kind of platforms that folks don't even know about that are out there, and they're free and able to be used. But I think that enough of our folks aren't getting engaged. We also have a show here on the network called The Gamers Den, and a lot of folks, including my friend Jatobi, are involved in the video game industry. But I don't feel that we're getting enough involved in the creation side or the business side. We might be getting involved as customers, but I don't think we're getting involved enough in terms of actually developing these jobs. Would you agree with that, Stephanie? And there are ways that you think we can get more engaged in these kind of creations, whether that's video game creation, whether that's AI, whether that's a number of these other kind of things that are going on in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a phrase like, be a creator of technology, not just a consumer of technology. We have a lot of times there was this consumer, mindset that we just buy everything when it comes out. We use everything. We use all these apps. We don't know how to create an app. We log into websites. We have no idea how to create a website. We're users and consumers. But we're not thinking about how this even came to be. And so, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I have nephews. I'm always kind of preaching to the choir, so to speak, with them about, you're not just going to play this video game. You're going to build your own video game. And so Scratch is a great free platform. Scratch Junior, then Scratch, where, my dad actually in his retirement, he's been teaching his grandchildren how to code using Scratch. And it's very easy and simple, to just create an account and just start making your own video games, making your own thing, making your own stuff. So in this open source software where, again, anyone can go and share and create and add on and things like that. And there's so I think a lot of large tech companies like the Googles of the world have, and universities too, have free sessions. Code.org is a great place to go to, just whether you're a beginner, whether you're in the middle, whether you're advanced, like there's something for you on that website. to encourage people to start learning how to code, because that's the foundation of artificial intelligence and everything else that comes, later. The basic is like, you have to know how the computer work, how to talk to a computer. And once you can figure that out, you can start thinking about, the blockchain and the AI and even the data science and all, how to analyze the data and things like that. And all that, again, the basis of all of that is math too, which is also why, it's critically important to know, to have a good understanding of numbers and how they work, because then you can use that to, to go into these fields. So I also tell students, no matter, wherever I am talking to a group of girls, a group of students, I don't really care what you do with your life. I don't care what path you go down, whether you decide to be a chef or you decide to go into social work. I mean, these are all, whatever inspires you, you should do that. But at the same time, just like learning English, I feel like coding and learning how to code is a very foundational thing for any career you decide to go into. So you can go and major in culinary arts, but have a minor in computer science or whatever. That is a skill you can take with you, no matter what industry you go into, no matter what path you go down. Having that skill set, it's just so powerful. And as Precious said about the art industry and having that business mindset, I mean, it's kind of the same way. It's like having a business mindset, having a basic understanding of how computers work, programming, building websites, apps, things like that. I mean, whether you decide to hire someone to do it for you or do it yourself, you at least know, you have an understanding of how things work, of what they're doing. You're not completely in the dark about it. You have and I think that's really, really critical to have that understanding. So yes, I do believe that there's an organization called CS for All, Computer Science for All, CS for All. It's an initiative that was started with the Obama White House. And it's, they're really trying to get computer science for all, starting in kindergarten, all the way K through 12, all the way through. It should be a core sort of thing that kids are taught. And I firmly believe that to be true, again, for no matter what industry you decide to go into, just having that background, having that knowledge, it's just critical in the age that we live in today. It wasn't critical 20 years ago, but it's critical today. When these kids are walking around with cell phones and talking to Alexa and Siri, it's critical. We're not doing that back in our day, but these days, computers, it's hard to do much of anything without a computer. And so that's why understanding how the computer works, not just how to use it, not just being a consumer, but also understanding the back end of it, I think is super important for all kids.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. I remember that when I don't have any kids of my own, but I have two nephews, and they're now about to be that last month, because their birthdays are in this time frame that we're in now, and I think both of them have had their birthdays go by. So they are 11 and 12 and all of that. But when they were born, my dad, who has definitely got a science background as well as a background in the arts, he was having them have that exposure, showing them plants, showing them the things around Mother Nature, having like that hands-on kind of experience that you were talking about, Stephanie, at a very young age. And I remember some of my friends were like, basically like, thinking that attitude that some folks have, that you don't need to teach kids at that young age because their brains haven't developed enough, or things along that line, which I don't believe, because I think that what he was doing is actually why they're the very intelligent young men that they are now, because they were having that exposure at an early age. So I'm wondering both of your thoughts. So I guess I'll turn it over to you, Precious. Do you find that you need folks to be engaged at a young age, even if they're trying to learn about camera work or film work, or do you think that it's something that they need to wait to a certain age to get to? And then I'll come to Stephanie with that same example and everything.
I think they should start as early as they show interest in it. If you're 3 and you love playing the drums, and yeah, you should just learn how to play, or if you keep trying to figure out how the camera works, or, and a lot of people don't realize, Stephanie, to your point, the arts is mixed with a lot of math and sciences as well. In order to edit and do motion graphics, you have to learn some sort of coding in order to do that. I remember I had to learn Animate. That was not my favorite class, but I did have to learn the coding. And it wasn't just that basic MySpace coding we did back in the day. It was actual learning how things function and move and how to generate your own and working with what already exists. So people need to realize that they're all connected. You can't just have one without the other. Music is all math. If you don't know how to do time with math and time with counting and music and notes and all that other stuff, you can't be successful in it. So you have to be well-rounded no matter what you do. And as far as being exposed to when you're younger, there's a bigger difference when you see someone who, like, I'll use me and my sister as an example. My sister and I grew up in very different backgrounds. I grew up in Jersey City, which is very like urban, city lifestyle. So I had different schooling than my sister who grew up in the suburbs, and she was in a magnet school and she learned how to play the bass and the viola, and piano and all these things. And even though we had very good upbringings, it was very different from the two of us. And she was able to dive right into being an artist, going to school for art and doing all those things, where I had to take a different route to kind of come back to what it was that I wanted to do. So that I saw firsthand what happens when you're exposed to this and you have the resources and you're allowed to explore your talents and interests at a young age.
What about you, Stephanie? You were talking about the fact that you've got that young daughter and everything. Did you start exposing her to things at a very young age, or did you wait till she's now closer to like that age of around 7 or 6? Or were you already exposing her things as even like a baby? Like I said, I want to say that literally they were like probably toddlers when my dad, their granddad, was exposing them to things.
Oh, I am the queen of exposure. And I think it's important to also note that I don't expose her just to things that I personally care about. I also expose her to things I know nothing about. It's important for her to, again, I may know nothing about, a certain topic but that doesn't mean I'm going to block her from having that exposure. And I think that when you're a toddler, when you're very little, even when you're still a newborn, I think the exposure there is really reading books. That was one thing that we have always done and continue to do, is just read a ton of books, because exposure comes in the form of a story, a book. And there's just countless books that you can, pick up, and you want to learn about a certain culture, go get a children's book about it. You want to learn about this, go get there's children's books on all different types of topics. And so I would just think of something that I thought, I want to read to her, expose to her. And I think all of that reading from infancy all the way through, now, it's definitely made her extremely cultured, well-rounded. She's light years ahead of me from, when I was a child. My parents tell me all the time, she's out of this world. They're impressed by everything that she does. And it's all, because I just intentionally just do a lot with her, just as my parents did with me. I'm just sort of following their lead in terms of parenting, but I've kind of tried to raise it a whole notch and just make sure that, I'm constantly doing different summer camps with her, different types of, books, like I said, workshops here and there, especially in COVID, when there's always something going on, and a lot of free things going on. It's easy to pop on and do a session here, a session there. So I just try to find different opportunities for her. And then I also think it's important for her to try different things and then see what sticks. Right now she's doing swimming, and, we'll try tennis, and we'll try a couple of different things and see what sticks. And then, once she gets a little older, then you kind of maintain that and just keep working, on the one that end up sticking. But in the beginning, you just don't know what's going to resonate the most. You don't know what she's going to enjoy the most. You don't know what they're going to really latch onto until you put it in front of them. And I think that is just, the case with, the work that I do. I always say, my programs are not just for those who already love STEM. If your child has never expressed an interest in STEM, that doesn't mean that they can't be a part of it, because this program may be that thing that completely changes things for them and open their eyes to it. Or it may be that thing that's like, absolutely not, I don't want to do that. But you don't know until they have the experience. And so, it's like, oh, my child doesn't like math. Well, let's, we can dig deeper into that. Was it a certain topic? Was it a certain teacher? Was it a certain this? Was that? Did you tell your child you didn't like math, so now all of a sudden your child doesn't like math? Because a lot of times, as a parent, you push things onto your children, and then they end up, following in your footsteps for that. So, so there's, yes, exposure and making sure that they're trying different things early on, and never, saying they can't do something, or they can't try something. I think it's just super important. It's just, as a parent, is really our job as a parent is to, do that. And so,
Yeah, definitely agree with you that. Could you share a little bit about the book that you wrote? Because you mentioned it earlier, and I'm sure that our listeners, who are a global audience here on IBM TV, we've got folks from India and other parts of the world that are engaged in science and engaged in STEM kind of work. And by the way, I'm actually a big fan of STEAM versus STEM, because I like the art part added as well. But that's just being my own personal biases. But definitely, could you share a little bit about the book and the program that you have created?
Absolutely. And I do want to say that STEM does absolutely not discount art by any means, nor does it say it's not important. I think even entrepreneurship, I've seen the acronym with 2 E's, one for entrepreneurship, one for engineering. Again, that also doesn't discount engineering. I think it doesn't discount anything. It's sort of just, to me, highlighting certain things that, in my mind, again, that have been underrepresented. But again, it doesn't discount, because we do need a lot more people in entrepreneurship, in the arts, other fields as well. But when I decided to sit down and write this book, it was based on my experience of always being the only woman in the room, and definitely the only Black woman. Maybe there's a couple other women here and there. But it was a frustration, honestly, of not seeing people that look like me. Whether, when I say that, talking about gender as well as race, both. And it was just, I didn't know when I decided to pursue my career as a chemical engineer. I didn't know that this was a thing. I just didn't know. And so when I got into the first internship, which was after my freshman year in college, it was just a huge, a huge shock to my system. And I say that because in my college, they did a pretty good job of balancing at least men and women. It was almost 50-50, not quite, but it was a pretty good mixture of gender, but it was not a good mixture of race. It still was, I think, about 7% African American. This was at MIT. But for gender, it was fairly balanced. So I didn't expect it to be a huge gender imbalance in the real work, in the real environment. And so as I experienced, different, as I had many different experiences, and then decided to go to graduate school, and went to graduate school and was working on an advanced degree in chemical engineering and different experiences there, and then in the workplace, it just, again, it was, and a lot of outreach I did too. It was just sort of like, how do we bring more people into these fields? Because you do feel so fulfilled by the work that you're doing, and you just want to and you're so, like Precious said, you're so behind the scenes. No one sees you. You're working, but you're not visible. So you're not going to watch it again. You're not going to turn on television and see any of these things pop up in any popular show. So how do we make these careers more visible? And this is also not before social media, but again, we're talking about a time frame where, in high school, I didn't get my first cell phone until senior year in college. So it wasn't, we didn't have Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff back when I was in college. This is all, post then. So books, writing a book was just the natural thing to do, because it was just, how do you learn about anything? You pick up a book, you read about it. Even before, again, YouTube was a big thing. So my desire to write this was just like, that's a fundamental way of learning and exposing, is through book and through stories. And so I sat down and I brainstormed careers in STEM that either I knew about, as well as careers I had no idea existed, because I wanted to make sure these were profiled, these were highlighted, they were brought to the forefront, they were made known. And then I researched and found women. I said, okay, now that I have a list of careers, now I have to find women in these careers. And a woman that is doing such stellar work that when you Google the career, she'll pop up, right? Because her work is well known, because she's been published, or because she's been, visible. in a lot of ways. So I found the women that are visible in these careers, and I reached out to them to ask them to share their story with me. So went through an interview process, and then drafted a story for each person. And after interviewing a ton of people, there were 44 in total. Then I saw a lot of commonalities, a lot of common themes that came up, and not only common amongst the 44, but amongst even myself as the 45th, so to speak. So amongst all of us, there were a lot of things that were just coming up time and time again. So that made the book more than just like a collection of stories and careers, but also a how-to book, because they were sharing things that if these were common amongst every woman that I spoke with, if they all talk about this in some shape and form, and even I can connect with it, these are really important things that need to be kind of flushed out and stand out. So then there's 8 chapters at the end of the book that really talks through these 8 themes, and really kind of makes them more actionable, tangible, like a how-to guide for girls. It's written for a middle school, high school age girl. So it's very, I had to make sure that in writing it, we weren't using, if we were using large words that, no one understood, we had to make sure we broke it down such that, a 11, 12-year-old girl could pick it up and have an understanding of it. So it took a lot of editing to get the wording to the right age group, and then a lot of beta test readers to make sure that they understood it all. We kind of go back and rework some things, and so it was a 3-4 year long process of from start to finish of writing and editing and producing the book. And then after I wrote the book and after it was released for some time, it kind of fell on me that it works better in conversation. It works better when you're with a group of other girls and you can kind of talk through some of these themes together. You can have conversations around what you're reading, and you can you can share what resonates with you and what you learned, what you picked up. Maybe somebody else didn't pick up the same thing, and then that way it just comes to life better. It's better than just reading in solitude. So that's when I decided to form the STEM Gems clubs. And I created a curriculum to go along with the book, so that a teacher, educator, a Girl Scout troop leader, a Jack and Jill mom, whoever could take the book, take the curriculum, and lead a group of girls in conversation around the themes and things that come up in the book. So it's now become a program. And then that also led to me starting the camps now too. So there's the book, the clubs, and now the camps where I can connect with some of the girls in the club and again, lead them in different activities to help bring the careers to life even more. They can actually meet women in STEM. We have, face-to-face virtual conversations with them. And so it's really a full program that, that the idea, the goal is that they now are exposed to things they were not exposed to before, and they now have opportunities they didn't have before. And if that alone, if I can meet that goal alone, the bigger goal is to have them want to pursue one of those careers. But if that alone is it, if they're just now exposed and they have the information available, then I've accomplished, then I can check a box and say, they know they have the opportunities. They are aware. They know what this career looks like. They've met someone in the career. They've been mentored. They've asked lots of questions. They've done activities, and they've done that continuously. And so that's really what it's all about. Again, even if you don't choose to go into one of the careers, just knowing about them, having some exposure to them makes a world of difference.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. What are some of the lessons there? Because you said that there were several lessons that you found to be common. So what were some of these commonalities? And also if you could share with our listener audience, maybe 2 or 3 of the people that are featured. Like I said, it's 45, so we're not going to do the whole 45, but we can get 2 or 3 examples that you would like to share of the people that are featured in the book, of those women pioneers. I'd love to hear some of the pioneers that you interviewed and some of the lessons that you learned. And then based on those lessons, and we'll see if Precious has learned some similar kind of lessons.
Yeah. So I just mentioned a few. So one of the big themes was the importance of taking risks. And there's a whole chapter about taking risks, because every last woman, including myself, had to be comfortable with taking a risk and knowing that you may fail and knowing that it may not go the way you planned, but you still took the risk anyway. And you packed a parachute. You know, you didn't just jump without a parachute. You have a parachute. But if you don't take that step, if you don't take that leap, then you're going to be stuck. And an example I give to girls, you know, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th, you know, grade girls, because this was me once, was the risk you could take is raising your hand in class and asking a question. When you know that your question in your head, your question is a dumb question, or your head, you know, if you say this question out loud, people are going to think you're stupid, or people are going to laugh at you. So you're afraid to raise your hand, you're afraid to ask. Simply raising your hand, asking that question is taking your risk. And that's, you know, it seems so small, but yet it's so big to that individual. Leaving home and going away to college is a risk to a lot of people. You know, not that fear keeps you from doing things. And so I think that in telling the stories of the women, and they talked about their path, they always had, you know, not just one, but multiple stories of a risk they had to take, something they had to overcome in order to push forward. So that's really important. Another one I'll share is this idea of going beyond. I call it going beyond, but another way of saying that is really just being curious. And as Precious gave an example of this earlier, she said that she had to self-teach herself some things. If there was something she didn't know how to do, she learned how to do it. She was curious. The curiosity leads you to wanting to go beyond, to doing more than the minimum. You're not just going to accept the minimum when you are, you know, when you're passionate about something. You take the next step and the next step and the next step. And they all shared what that meant to them in terms of being so curious about something or how something worked. One example was a woman named Sarah McAllister, and she's similar to my story in terms of my dad having me help him fix the car. She used to help her dad fix the cars as well. And she ended up, she enjoyed that so much. She became a mechanical engineer, and she studied combustion because that's what makes the car work. So she's actually authored a whole textbook about combustion and how it works. And that all stemmed from her curiosity about how a car works. You know, more though just how to fix it, but how does it even work? All these different things come together. How do they build cars? How do they work? And so that's another general concept that came up, was how curiosity about something led to pursuit of, you know, led to that ignited that pursuit of something bigger, that led to, you know, that career path. In terms of some of the women in the book, I would say probably the one that I did maybe 5 or 6 cartwheels after she agreed to be in the book was Mary Lou Jepsen. And I think Mary Lou Jepsen, I was excited to have her be a part of it because she created a solar powered laptop, low cost, such that people in third world countries that didn't have access to electricity could connect. And I just think to have a very lightweight laptop that's run by solar energy that you can use, you know, in other places where, you know, you don't have what we have here, is phenomenal. And so I loved her work with that. It's called the One Laptop Per Child Project. I remember visiting San Francisco and going to the museum there and seeing her laptops on display for people to kind of see and check out. So she's well known for that, but she's also done a ton of work in virtual reality, machine learning. And so she's definitely a pioneer in the tech space. So she was somebody that I was really excited to talk to. And then closer to home, one of my chemical engineering professors at MIT, Paula Hammond, is another woman that I featured. So there was a couple of them that I knew in some way. And so she definitely was, when I wanted to find a chemical engineer, it was no doubt who to go to for that. Paula was the woman for that. She was impressive as a professor. She was a Black woman. And I've always looked up to her, and she's just doing great work in the space of in cancer and nanotechnologies, things that are so small to see with the naked eye. So I think her work also speaks volumes and has had a huge impact on humankind. So those are two. Pardis Abeti is another one. She's a microbiologist. She is well known for decoding Ebola, and she's done a lot of work with vaccinations, immunology. Again, she's a microbiologist. So I think her work is also on a global scale in terms of what she's been able to accomplish and how she's been able to help people, not just locally, but also, in other countries as well. Her work has taken her to many other countries. And then on top of that, she also is a singer and musician in a rock band. So I think her story shows you that you can have multiple interests. You can be a badass scientist and then also go play and sing in a rock band. And I love that, because I love how, people always assume that, if you do this, you can't do that. Well, why can't you do that? Why can't you be in a rock band if you want to? And there's quite a few stories like that too, of women. There's another woman, Erica Ebel. She's a biotechnologist, but she also is has won a beauty pageant. So she's in the book, she's wearing her lab coat with her name on it, Dr. Erica, but she also has a tiara, because that's the crown she won when she won the beauty pageant. So she shows you also you can wear stilettos and be in pink lipstick, and also, be a scientist developing new technology. So it's a lot of that too. And I think that's also why it works really well in that group setting where you have that, the club environment, because then you can talk about all these little nuances and talk about just all these little things that come out, just things that resonate with you that, that you read that just popped out to you, but then something different to somebody else. And then you can share that. Those are some of the stories that pop in my head, but if, there's other people that would have other favorites that pop out for different reasons. So that's really, I think the beauty of it is that it's just something's going to hit you. I don't know what, I don't know which part, I don't know which story, which woman, but there's something that's going to hit you that's really going to make you, that's going to impact you in some way. And that's to me what it's all about.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. I was actually, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, as you heard me reference to earlier last week, we had the Black Business Expo, and there were two, well, there were several, but there was definitely some women that I saw using their platforms in order to create new products and new things of that nature. And some of them even came out of their own experiences. Like I know that definitely Fran Harris, who is a former WNBA player and a multimillionaire out of the Texas area, if I remember correctly, but now she's got an energy drink. So she's marketing this energy drink that she has helped to create and sell and things of that nature. And where me and Precious are here in the Triangle area of North Carolina, there's a young woman that actually survives COVID and is also involved in the health space and everything, Latasha Nicole. But she just recently came out with a tea. It's a very much of a health-oriented tea that she talked about. So she's doing these kind of health kind of teas and everything. So we are seeing women that are kind of coming up with new products and new innovations and all of that. So that's one of the things that, as you were talking, I was thinking about on a local and even a national level in the sense of what Fran is doing. But what are some of the life lessons that you have also learned, Precious? I said I was going to come back to you. So what are some of those life lessons that you've learned that might be similar to some of the things that Stephanie has found out among the folks that she had research with?
A lot of similarities. I mean, the commonality of us being Black women in business, in anything, just living in this world as Black women. Finding your voice and not being afraid to use it has been a big lesson. When I was younger, I would raise my hand a lot. And it was often because I knew the answers to a lot of the questions, because I always read. I started reading at a very young age, and I just always like to learn things. And I got made fun of for that so bad, to the point where I stopped raising my hand because I didn't want to be the know-it-all in the classroom. And that stayed with me through my entire school career. And I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until, as an adult, I'm having issues and anxiety when having to answer questions. And I'm like, what is this about? And it was from those moments. So especially being in a male-oriented career path, going in and studying audio engineering, another type of engineering, but audio engineering, and having to be surrounded by all these males in a room, being the only woman in the course and the only one that graduated from the course at the time, is very intimidating. It can be in your mind, if you have those insecurities and that fear already instilled in you from prior experiences, it can be debilitating at times. So I learned to overcome that. And I learned that, you know what? I can forge my own path here. Even though I'm the only one, eventually I won't be the only one. But me getting through this will help somebody else come into it and get through it as well. So I had to push past that and say, you know what, I may not be perfect at this, but I can learn what I need to learn to forge my own path in this industry, in this career path. And that's how I discovered sound design and went into the film aspect of things instead of the traditional route, which was like the studio and recording and all that other stuff. So coming out of that fear mindset of if I don't fit the mold, I can't do it, and realizing that the mold does not matter. I am me, and I'm the only me that exists in this entire world. So what fits me is what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to do best. And that's why I was put here, to make sure that this can happen, to influence other people to find their own path and do their own things as well. So really just realizing, you know what, it's okay if you're the only one in the room, because if, excuse me, eventually you won't be. It's okay if you know all the answers, because you can teach somebody else. And it's okay to just be you. That's it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. As you were saying that, I was thinking to myself that it was just several years back, like I said, in the late 50s here, my own age and everything. But definitely, I remember going to a concert in Greensboro, and there was a sound engineer, one of the ladies running the concert hall and everything. But she was the only one there. And I know a lot of times when I do festivals and things of that nature, a lot of times it is the guys that are doing the engineering of the events at the concerts, particularly the outside concerts. But she was a woman in that field, and like I said, I want to say she might have been of Asian descent, if my memory is serving me correctly. But there are not a lot of women that are sound engineers. But that's a career that, if you don't want to be the singer or the face of the entertainment, it's something that more people, I would argue, of color, and definitely more women should try to go into. So would you agree with that, Precious, that we don't see enough women that are doing sound engineering in the sense of doing like concert engineering, or even doing, I don't even know that many. I know there are a few, but I don't even think there are enough in the studio space, which is also something that sound engineers
Yeah.
can do.
I agree. I will say Jasmine Battle, who's here in the Triangle area, is amazing at what she does, and she is a live audio engineer along with her husband. Amazing. But yes, they're few and far between. Like we don't know, could probably all fit in the same room, honestly, especially within the area. But it's not just sound engineering; it's also editing. I'm an editor as well, and there are not many of us that exist, or not many that are known to exist. I mean, directing. How many women directors, how many first are you hearing about now that are just coming out? They just announced the first Black female director of a Marvel film coming out. And it's like, it's sad that in 2020 that's still happening. Why are we still announcing first in 2020? This should be a commonality. It should just be.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It should just be and everything. And there's so many, like we were talking about earlier, easy tools to get and everything of that nature. I know that when we were doing the Black Business Expo, there were a couple of things that folks were not happy with in terms of the audio. And I was like, well, I don't have it on my computer right now, or I did at the moment, but I was like, well, I need to get an editing tool. So I went and got Bandicam. So I'll be doing some
Uh,
editing using that very basic tool that exists that anybody can use to eliminate some things that they may not want in the post-production end. They can't do much in the live end, but there are tools that are available that you can use. And that's just one example. I know there are other tools out there and some that other folks might find even better than Bandicam. But I did see that Bandicam was there, and it's a quick editing tool, and it actually has some free elements to it and all. But I'm just amazed every time that I find these platforms. Like I said, I went to that virtual reality a Zoom meeting, and that's where I learned about that free virtual reality platform and everything. And I'm sitting there going like, wait a minute, you can learn virtual reality, you can learn it free. And definitely that was there. I'm sure that it's not as complex as some of the more complicated programs that you have to pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for, but there are some very basic tools that you can use. But coming back to the interview aspect and everything, I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about y'all's both views? Because and the reason I'm bringing her up is that y'all have also talked about the fact that you don't want to be the last. Like, and that's something that I remember that Kamala said, is that yes, she's about to be the first female vice president and everything. But she said, and I remember that speech in her acceptance speech, but I guarantee you I will not be the last. So she's walking the path just like other folks were the folks whose shoulders she stands on. So I'd love to hear both of you and your thoughts about Kamala as a leader, and definitely your just kind of like thoughts and reflections on her having this position that she's about to accept in January. So I'd love to hear both of your perceptions of Kamala Harris and what she means to the field of women leadership. So I'll start with you, Precious, and then work down to Stephanie.
I think what she physically represents is that it's possible. It happened. It's possible. Fingers crossed everything goes the way it's supposed to, because a lot of craziness right now. But it shows, I've heard younger women, even from other ethnicities, that looks, just to see someone that looks like them, that sounds like them, that moves like them, regardless of how you feel about politics or policies or anything, just to see a physical representation of someone like you in that position is monumental. And I'm excited to see all of the good and the influences that come from that, because I've seen what's happened in my own local realm. I've heard what people have told me from them seeing me do things. And it's small in comparison. I mean, it's important, but it's small in comparison to where she is right now. So for her to have that global stage, I can only imagine all the good that's going to come from her influence there.
Definitely. And what about you, Stephanie? What are some of your thoughts about what that means to society in general?
I mean, it's just a great visual for the entire world, because I talked earlier about how we don't have enough representation on TV and certain fields and certain careers. The biggest platform you can possibly have is to run the United States, to be the leader of the United States. That's, everybody's looking at the U.S. There's no larger platform than that. There's no television station with more ratings than that office. So for that office to finally have a woman in control, a woman in power on that level, it just really shows girls and boys all over that it's time, that it's been time, but it's finally here. And, for young girls like my daughter who's 7, who sees that, I mean, that's going to be her normal, right? It's not our normal, because we've never had it before. But someone who's that young, seeing that, is now going to truly believe that she can do and be anything, because they're being raised in an environment where it actually is true. And so it's such a powerful thing. It's and not only that, but because she's a woman who her background is her education. She went to HBCU. She went to Howard University. I think that also says a whole lot for the power of HBCUs. The power of, there's so much criticism out there, connected to HBCUs. Well, this blows all that out the parks. Like,
I actually have a story. Sorry to interrupt, but I have a story. I went to Hampton my freshman year, and somebody in my family told me, what is that going to do for your resume if they see you graduated from an HBCU? So yes.
Exactly. And so many people may think that and never say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone said that to you, but a lot of people think it and don't say it. So I think it also goes to show that an HBCU does prepare you for life, right? Which, of course, those who with HBCUs already know. And the world should already know, but it's sort of just like now it's on the big stage, on the big there for everyone to see. And so I think that's another powerful thing. And it also she just represents so much. She represents, she's biracial. She represents kind of community and harmony in that way. She's a woman who is unapologetically herself, and her background is her own. So I think she definitely resonates with so many different people in our country, outside of our country, and is a great example for young girls that there's nothing if they can dream it, they can be it. We just have yet another example of that in the highest form, in the highest possible form. Besides being the president of the United States, vice president is the second most thing. And then before her, I think Michelle Obama had set the bar because in terms of a Black woman. Of course, President Obama in terms of being, Black, but And now, and we have had other great examples of women like Oprah and other women who's just kind of self-made examples. So this is yet another example that if you can, you can't be what you can't see. We can see that, So now it's just more evidence that we can be anything that we want to be. We can do anything we choose to do. And so I think that's really what Kamala represents to so many of us, especially like a young girl.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would agree with you on that. And by the way, I said Bandicam, it was actually Bandicut. That's the editing tool and everything. But that being said, now that I've corrected that, the other thing that's going on in our society, unfortunately, is, and we've talked about it on this platform, the IBM TV platform, is the racial division and things along that line. And we're seeing that whether it's the Republicans versus the Democrats, red versus blue, or just a lot of the whole racial unrest that's going on, that is some factor that's what's going on in our society. I mean, we've seen the Dreamers trying to fight to get their platform and their message out. We've definitely seen Black Lives Matter try to get their word out, and of course, we still see what's going on with the oppression of our young folks by the police and everything. But I'd love to hear both of you young ladies' perception on where we are in the sense of race and class and cultural relationships. So I'll start with you, Precious, and then come down to Stephanie.
I think the current administration ripped the Band-Aid that was on the country for quite some time. One that was already coming off in the previous administration, but it was completely ripped off. And it kind of allowed for people to just come out and do and be and just not be afraid to say what they were about and how things are going. So I honestly don't know what it's going to take to eradicate it. I don't know that if you can. I don't know what else we can do. It's frustrating at this point. But me being only 34, who am I to say that I'm tired of this when I have grandparents who have been living through this for, for decades? So honestly, don't have an answer for what we can do to help this, but I just know that it's more rampant than it has been. And me growing up through the 90s and not seeing it for what it was. So
yeah, definitely. And I know that and we'll keep continue this conversation going for at least a little bit longer, me and Precious and everything, but I know Stephanie's got to bounce off, so I'd love to hear your thoughts about where we are as a society, Stephanie, and I'd also love for you to have this opportunity to tell folks as to where they can get these great things that you're doing and how Precious can get in touch with you so that you can make this film.
Well, I think that I'm hopeful for the future. I'll say that. I'm very positive. I'm very excited about the result of this election, even though it's still not 100% confirmed. I think that, the U.S. has been divided for some time now. And I think that this presidency, this next presidency and this next, incoming president, vice president, and their team will hopefully bring some unity to our country. I think we need it now, almost like we needed it back in the civil rights era. It's just, I wasn't around back then, but, it feels very much divided in a lot of ways. And I'm hoping that, this presidency will represent, not just the red states but the blue, not just the blue states, but the red states too. Just really be unite us all. And you can't change people. They are who they are. Their life is their life. Their experiences are their experiences. And some people are just stuck in their ways, and they're going to believe what they want to believe. And there's lots of a lot of hate groups out there that white supremacists, be frank, who believe that they are supreme. And I don't think they're going to go anywhere, even though we have a new president and vice president. They're still there. So in some sense, all we can do is really pray and hope that they're dismantled, hope that they have a change of heart, hope that they see things differently. But I think as long as we have the racists and the white supremacists and the people that are really trying to keep us separate, that are trying to, prevent unity, then, it's never going to be completely a perfect, union of states. But I think we are going in the right direction, at least in 2021, hopefully with this, with new leaders leading us towards that.
Yeah,
So that's kind of my
definitely.
thoughts on that. I'm hopeful, but I don't know. I live in
Understood.
Atlanta, so it's a little bit different in Atlanta versus some other city, other places.
Right. Well, and y'all have a very important Senate race coming up there in Georgia that's going to be impacting a lot of things on the Senate front, depending on how those runoffs turn off. This is a global platform, IBM TV and everything, so I would love, and this can be the final question for you, Stephanie. I know that I said the last one was, but what kind of message of hope would you like to share with the audience of the world, and just a message of encouragement that you would like to give to people that are watching from all over? Because I know we've got programs out of Nigeria, programs out of South Africa, programs out of Malaysia, and a number of other places. So I do know that we have a global audience that watches this on a regular basis, whether live or in replay.
Well, I know that people have been watching what's going on in this election and seeing all the disarray and all of the hostility, to be honest. And I don't think this is norm for the U.S. So I think people who are outside of the U.S. hopefully know that our current president is doesn't it's not about unity and doesn't represent, I think, what the U.S. has, the best of the U.S. And so I hope that that people around the globe know that we are that things will change and for the better, and that we are a country that hopefully can continue to lead and be the example for others of how to do things peacefully. No matter what side, the other aisle you're on, you still can agree to disagree on certain things and come together on other things. And we've had good examples of that in the past, and hopefully we'll have good examples of that moving forward, of doing what's best for not just yourself and your immediate family, but doing what's best for everyone else as well. And so, that's sort of my message there. Is I know people are looking at this very closely, but I hope to get back to truth and honesty and civility and humanity. Humanity. I think that's what we need more than anything, is just decency and humanity for everyone, and be that example for the world to see how it can be done. And I think that's what our new president, vice president will reenact, and hopefully we can continue that moving forward, even after their term is up.
Yeah. And on a parting note, I know that the folks need to know how to reach you and how to get in touch with you. So the website and any other ways that folks can reach you if they want to learn more about the STEM Gem program.
Yeah, so the website is STEM Gems. So Gems is plural with an S, BOK.com. That's the website, STEMGemsBook.com. And then on social media, it's really, if you're on Twitter, it's at STEM Gems Book on Twitter. If you're on Facebook, at STEM Gems Book on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, same thing. If you're on LinkedIn, Stephanie Espy, you can look up just my name. And then also the Math SP part of what I talked about, that's also the website for that is mathsp.com. And that is focused more on building the STEM foundation for kids when it comes to math and science subjects. We work with students starting in middle school all the way up through high school and into college with any math or science subject. So that you can also find that on social media, Math SP, and the website, again, mathsp.com.
Cool.
So Precious, please reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Or, I'm pretty easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
You can just even email me directly. And then, but yeah, Mark, thank you so much for inviting me here today. It was such a pleasure to be with you, and Precious, a pleasure to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it was great and everything. Glad that you were able to join us. I know you got to bounce off of me and Precious, so continue talking for a while. I keep cheating with other questions, but I'm staring at that artwork in the back, and I'm going like, what is this art piece that she has in the back above her head? So what is the artwork behind you?
Oh, for me. I'm glad you asked. This is a piece by actually a good friend of mine's father. So my friend Onaje Henderson is he owns an art gallery in Atlanta. and his father is a painter and an artist. And this is one of his original paintings that I just, when I saw it, I just loved it. It's very happy. It's very colorful. But his gallery represents Black artists, and he rotates through different artists. And I went one day, and this just kind of spoke to me. So this is Aaron Henderson piece, and you can find the gallery is called the Zucot Gallery, Zucot Gallery, and Onaje Henderson and his brother actually run the gallery. So
cool. Well, I'll definitely have to check out their artwork, and you have to tell them to reach out to me so they can hopefully appear on the show and learn, and we can learn more about their artwork as well, because we do love celebrating all of the folks involved in the STEM, with both E's involved in everything. So we love celebrating folks in the technology field, in the sciences, in entrepreneurship, in art, and in a number of other things. And I would actually add activists, so I might have 2 A's and 2 E's in the whole conversation.
Absolutely.
So thanks a lot, and I'll definitely look forward to talking to you more and having more conversations with you, and maybe even having you appear on some other shows here on IBM TV in the near future as well. So that you are a great guest, and you definitely shared your passion about STEM and all of what it's about. So I definitely want to thank you for joining me on the show. And like I said, me and Precious will continue talking for a while, and then we'll wrap that up after a while, because Monday is my crazy day, because I do 3 podcasts on Monday. So I do 2 that are streaming and 1 that's audio. So, and believe it or not, I did all of this after doing a whole week of being the technician behind the scenes for Eric Kelly and his Black Business Expo. So I know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, which is getting some very good rest.
I understand. I'm actually going off to do more work. So I understand how you feel. But you all take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
No problem. Take it easy. Cool. That's just me and you, Precious, and we're just going to continue the conversation. But definitely, I thought she was very motivational and had a lot of very enlightening things that were going on. But I'm definitely, like I was saying earlier, I'm oftentimes shocked by the fact that there aren't enough women or more women in things like audio engineering, in things like chemical engineering, and a number of other fields that I would think that we would have more people of color and more women in, but they aren't necessarily being exposed to these fields. So I definitely think that our education system needs to find ways to get more people engaged in this work and everything. Are there any things that you're doing similar to what she's doing with filmmaking? So are there like any initiatives that you're doing to help to get some of our young people to learn about filmmaking?
So this one is not in particular to filmmaking, but it adds the activist element to it. I am actually working with Eric P. Bryant. He has a campaign called We Ain't Going Back to That, and WAGBTT.com. And he designed a line of shirts with a novel design on it. And at first look, you're like, what is that? But then when you get closer, you realize that it talks about racism, xenophobia, all the bad things that are happening in the world. And it's essentially saying we're not going back to that anymore. We're tired of it. It's time to move forward. And at what more important time than with this new changing of the guard, with this new administration coming in, is it important to have this message come out? So we will actually be working on some things to get that message out. And his initiative is to get 1 million people in these shirts in solidarity saying that we're not going back to that collectively. And so we're filming some things around that to kind of bring to light, the important issues of what we should be fighting for in this country. So.
Yeah, you definitely have to do that and find ways to fight these different issues and all of that. We didn't actually deal with Stephanie when she was here about the pandemic and everything, but how are you managing to do even the film work and everything within this pandemic era? Because I know that I've got a good friend who is a musician, and actually I've got several friends that are musicians, but one in particular, and he's not been doing as many gigs because, there's all these restrictions in the music industry and not as many in the film industry. But how are you managing to even get the film accomplished when we have these kind of like rules and regulations of how many people can be on the set, how many people can be among each other, and all of that, because of course we're trying to stay safe. So how are you managing to continue to fight and be healthy within what's going on with the pandemic and still work in the filmmaking space?
When people said, I have nothing to do but sit around and watch Netflix, I'm tired, I'm bored. I said, I am not, okay? I've been blessed enough to be working consistently since this happened. We had just come off of the Korea Fest event that happened in Raleigh, had 3,000 people there, and we had a lot of post production things that we had to do for that. So, being an editor and being in post production, which is after everything, for those who don't know, is after everything's been filmed, you're then part of the team that helps put it together to then go out to the public. Being on that realm of things, you have a lot of things that were filmed months or even years in advance that you can now continue to work on. In addition to that, being an original content creator, having my own YouTube channels, being able to create and master my own, content and do it creatively, like through StreamYard or Zoom or with your phone and just putting it together. And then also, once the restrictions were lifted, we were able to do some physical shoots with social distancing in big areas and making sure everyone was safe. But now that things are kind of reversing, that's closing down too. So essentially, just trying to stay afloat by making new content, writing things, putting things out, trying to figure out and troubleshoot how can we move forward in this film industry in a brand new way. And then realizing that when you turn on the TV, it looks like this.
Right.
So we're not the only ones having this problem. The
Right.
NBCs, CBS, CNN, everybody's trying to figure it out. Say, what do
They're
we
all
do?
having
Yeah.
they're all having that problem. That is very true. We're all having that problem and everything. That's so true. If you would, I'd love to hear you tell about the YouTube channel that you've got, because I know that
Sure.
you are definitely have your own YouTube and everything. So I'd love to hear folks to know about what that YouTube channel is and how they can get engaged with it.
Sure. So I have two main ones that I work on. One is my K-pop life. You can find us on Instagram at my K-pop life 20. And I do that with my friend and partner, Andrea. And we essentially talk about how we are fans. And it's more than just the teeny boppers. It's more than just a stereotypical group that people think like Korean pop music. I remember going to KCON in Jersey, and I saw a 70-something-year-old woman that looked like me wearing a headband and a shirt, and she was very proud of her shirt. And none of us were judgmental. It was just us enjoying the music. So that's what our channel is all about, putting out content for the fans by the fans. And then I also have another channel with my husband. It's called Our K Drama Life, and that's life with LYFE. And we watch Korean dramas, which is another form of the film industry. And Mark, I don't know if you've ever seen Korean dramas or film. It's just amazing. The cinematography, everything, the storytelling is really, really good. And I've seen Nollywood and Bollywood and all these other industries, but theirs is a little bit different. It's very interesting to watch. So we do reviews on some of their work as well. So yeah.
Good. Well, I have not seen that I'm aware of. I definitely remember the old form of the old martial arts kind of Chinese
Mm-hmm.
Korean movies, the old Bruce Lee movies. And we actually here on IBM TV have a young lady, Hamara Raymond, who does a film called Homerawood, which actually celebrates Hollywood, but shows the connection between Hollywood and Bollywood, because it's really more about Bollywood is
Nice.
what her whole show is about. But then I recently connected her with a gentleman that does some Nollywood awards or some
Mm-hmm.
African film awards. So she's connecting all of these elements together, and that actually airs on Tuesday. So that's one of the shows that we
Nice.
have here to try to connect people on this kind of platform on this regular basis. So definitely, I'm glad that you and coming back to K-pop, there's actually a young lady, because I'm involved in one of our community radio stations, that is thinking about doing a K-pop show. She's a big K-pop
Oh,
fan
please
and is
do.
from Korea. So she's looking at possibly doing a K-pop show in the field of radio in terms of community radio here. So I've been trying to push her to do that, because every time I go to
Yes.
the restaurant that she works at, she's a big time fan of K-pop and what K-pop is all about, having that background in her own history. So I'm hoping that
Look,
Nana, that's her
let's
name,
talk
will
because
join us and start.
yes, let's talk because we work. Please tell her she needs to do because we work with DJ who's in Seattle, and as you mentioned, musicians are having a hard time. That
Yeah.
means DJs are having a hard time too because they can't congregate, they can't do parties, so they're trying to figure out new ways to still reach their audience and still get the energy that they need. And one of those things is virtual parties. So we actually do virtual parties with a DJ in Seattle. His name is Mubek. He went by DJ Yup in Korea, but he's been in the game for almost 20 years now. So if she has that show, she may have a DJ to help spin on that show.
That could be a great plan. So we'll have to definitely talk to her and get her involved in that so she can have that going on on a regular basis. I'm going to bring in,
Yes.
we got one other guest that's going to be joining us. I'll see if she's ready to come on, and that's Carmela Renee Hill. So hopefully she'll have her camera on and be ready to engage us in the conversation as well, because she's an activist also. So there we go. How are you doing? We've been having a great conversation. We've been talking about all kinds of things involving Precious, who is a filmmaker and an audio person. And then we also had earlier a young lady, Stephanie Espy, who is involved in the field of STEM. So she's a STEM scientist and has written a lot of things to get folks involved in STEM. And I know that you're also somebody that's been involved in like trying to get us involved in a lot of different areas. So I'd love you to introduce yourself to the audience that we've got here on IBM TV and tell what you've got going on so that Precious can hear your story. And who knows, she might decide to make a film about you, because we've already decided that she's going to make a film about Stephanie.
This is wonderful. This is wonderful. Well, hello. My name is Carmela Renee Hill. I am an interior designer, professional interior designer. I have been designing for over 20 plus years. I am an author. I am a speaker, international speaker now. I am also an instructor, a transformational coach. I do a lot of things. I'm an advocate. I fight for a lot of issues, whether it's business issues, interior design issues, education. So I have been very blessed to have a diverse background. I've worked for a congressman. I've worked for someone running for state superintendent. I've done quite a lot of things. And people often say, how did you do it all? And it's because of God's grace that I have been able to do all the wonderful things. In 2015, I went to the White House to decorate, and I was blessed during that time. And it's one of those moments you never forget. Even as Thanksgiving coming up, because I went during Thanksgiving time. So even as Thanksgiving is coming up, I'm thinking about that time when I went and was able to get on HGTV and then come back home, and I'm flooded with media and just a whole lot of hosts of things going on saying what we had, who she went where. And so God has truly guided my life. And I bless Miss Andrea Harris, who has passed away. She was my mentor, my coach, and she kicked me out there. And she was like, you can do this and you don't need my help. But if you need to drop my name 1 or 2 times, you know how to do it. But you can stand on your own 2 feet. And so 20 plus years, January will make 21 years in the design business and as an entrepreneur. I continue to share my story with others and let them know that, look, you're going to have some rocky times. This pandemic is not the end of the world. You got to get back up and just brush yourself off and keep pushing it. And if you need a shoulder to cry on, we have to cry on each other's shoulder and keep going. But that's what it's been about. I've had and still have several podcast shows and one on interior design. I co-share a show on faith, motivation, and leadership with Michelle Degree McKinney, and then Author and Tips is another one, and Jimmy Davis introduced me to that whole world. And so I've just been doing wonderful things and just enjoying it. Tell people if I can't enjoy it, it's not meant for me. But God keeps pushing me out there. And I'm in my last week of divinity school. So I'm supposed to be writing a paper right now. But I said I'm jumping on work and I'm going to make this happen that I can be a blessing to somebody else.
No, I appreciate you doing that. Definitely appreciate you jumping on and sharing those blessings. One of the things we were talking about with Stephanie is how there's not enough folks that are in these different careers. Like I said, she's out of the field of engineering. I would argue the same thing about interior designing. I don't know that we see enough people of color that are doing interior designing. So I'd love to hear you talk about how you got involved in that journey and why you're involved in that journey. And as you were talking about having that experience with the White House, I remember that there's something similar that went on with the gentleman and his wife that owns Wellies, because they actually had the opportunity to have Mr. Biden involved in things going on. And as soon as Mr. Biden was involved with their restaurant, the restaurant getting all this national and international kind of exposure because of the fact that the Bidens discovered Zimbabwean food when they went there and discovered what was going on and having that exposure.
Yes, I have an undergraduate degree in computer science, and so people laugh often and say, "You left brain and right brain." I said it all just comes together is how it works. But I started in interior design when I was in the corporate world, and I actually started out just doing it for fun. Like I said, over 20 some years ago, design was starting to become popular, and you had all the design channels and things, and I was watching the show and it just really piqued my interest. And because I have a technical degree, at the time, websites were not that big. People weren't doing a whole lot. And I could, sketch out things on the computer back then where others couldn't. And so that's kind of how it all started. And then I just started learning everything I possibly could at the time. And still, I study, my craft very well. And so I started just working on family and friends, coworkers. They knew about it, and I did it because I was traveling so much, and I needed something to break the monotony. And I was also in working on my MBA at Carolina at the time. And my classmate's wife said, "Oh, you're really good at this. You should make it a business." And I was like, "Nah, I just like doing it on the side." And then the gentleman I was dating at that time, he was like, "Look, if you're gonna make money, or you just gonna keep doing it on the side and then get mad with all the time that you're spending doing it." And I said, "Oh, I need to make this a business." And so I contacted the Women's Business Center. At the time, it was Miss Verona and Miss Joy Seiler was there at that time, and Miss Harris, of course. And then they just kept pushing me, and I got involved in NABO, National Association of Women Business Owners. I'm the current president for the Raleigh Durham chapter, and so I got involved with that. Had some great mentors to push me even down that path a little bit more, and then the housing market hit. And the housing market hit hard. And I said, "Okay, Lord, am I supposed to go back? What am I supposed to do with this thing? Am I supposed to go back into the corporate world?" And it was like, "No, you can stand the test of time." North Carolina did not get hit as bad as some of the other states. And by then I had left my corporate job. And so I said, "Okay, this is definitely going to be a faith walk." And in that faith walk, it was probably a year or two before North Carolina started really getting hit hard, or months afterwards. And that it pushed me over into the political field for a little while. So that's how I got over there. I used my computer science degree and operations background, but I continue to operate my business. And so I say that even during the pandemic, you learn a lot of things along the way, owning a business. And so if I can survive the housing market, then surely I'm going to survive this pandemic. But I pressed hard through it. And I have been very blessed in my business to go to the White House to decorate. But I've also do a lot of university work. And so I've seen a whole lot of things from HBCUs to some of the other higher education colleges. I've been able to go there and do a lot of work. I've been blessed to also do a movie. So God just keep opening doors. If you stay in it long enough, he'll see that you dedicated to it. And that's really, what he had called me to do. And I know that it's all part of me transforming lives. To me, design is not just design. I used to think that way until I had clients to share with me. You come in and not only you transform my house, but you spend time with me and you talk and you transform my life too. And so it has been ministry to me. And I have been very blessed to do a lot of churches and just a lot of wonderful projects. People ask me, can they shadow me? And I say, I do so much in one day, you would be just like, sit down somewhere. And I also teach interior design. So my students are always laughing like, okay, what are we doing? But I've also had a chance to do Parade of Homes in North Carolina. But the opportunity to go to the White House was definitely one that I will never forget. I feel like I was on assignment, and it's been said you were on assignment while you were there. That we had to report that Thanksgiving Day. And I
Right.
remember when I got my tentative acceptance letter, because you get a tentative letter first, and then they vet you, and then you go through that whole process. And I didn't tell anybody but my mom. And I said, don't tell anybody. And so Thanksgiving Day, I'm packing up and I take the train to DC because a lot of people don't realize you pay for your own hotel,
Mm.
parking, all of that. And so I'm headed up and I give my mom a hug and a kiss, get on the train, and I go up to DC and get the Uber to the hotel. And I said, okay, Lord, here we go. I don't know how many people it's going to be. And they have an event planning team. And so I get there and I say, that night, it's tons of people across the country. Most of our volunteers have a few that are designers and then florists and then event planning team. So it's 100 or so of us. We get our assignments. And the first day we go to the White House. The second day we go to the warehouse. And I was like, ooh, I ain't set up for the warehouse because the warehouse means cold and a concrete floor. And so I was like, ooh, this one is a little different from it. But everybody had that warehouse experience. And then the next day, the doors just open. The next day, I'm helping my team. And I always like to add this point is God will prepare you for whatever he's getting ready to take you into. And so maybe 2 months before that, I was asked to do Christmas decorations at the church, and we have a big church. And I was like, okay. And so we ended up having like 4 or 5 Christmas trees. So I had a lot of practice, but I also had a team at the church that worked on the committee, and we all worked together and just had fun. So as I was telling my pastor that I had been accepted, was going to the White House, he was like, well, you had a lot of practice on trees. I said, yeah, I did. And he said, they're going to have more trees than we got at the church, right? And I said, yeah, I didn't think about it like that. But anyway, it was a wonderful experience. And while I was there, I said, okay, God, whatever you want me to do while I'm here, okay. And so my committee that I was on, they said, you get down from the scaffold, which I'm not crazy about scaffolds, but you get down from the scaffold and you tell us what to do. And I was like, no, I'm helping. This is teamwork. And they said, no, you're good at this. You guide us so we can hurry up and get it done. So I said, okay. And little did I know that I was being watched. And I always tell the young people, you never know who's watching you. So always be on your best behavior. And they kept coming over and saying, you're doing a great job. And I was like, thank you. And then they came over again. They said, you're doing a great job. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then that third time they said, you're doing a great job. And I was like, okay, that was 3 times too many. But I laughed about it and I said, I know they sent some people home for not following the rules. Hopefully I'm following the rules. And then they came over and they said, come follow us. And we got, grab a couple other people and we got something special. And I was blessed with a couple of others to go into the Oval Office to decorate. And we had, I think, 45 minutes to get it done before the president came in. And so that right there just sealed the deal for me. And then God wasn't through. The next day they came to me and they thought I was a jokester because I was like, what we doing again? And so it was during the Paris attack. And so but not only am I designing, I'm praying too, because I'm like, okay, somebody had jumped the fence while we was there. So there's a whole lot going on. But they pulled me to the side and they said, hey, Colonel, we got a special project for you. And I was like, okay. They said, what would you do with these trees? And I said, well, what were you going to do with the trees? And they said, you're funny. And I was like, no, I'm real serious. And they said, well, we're going to put candy canes. And I said, don't nobody put candy canes on Christmas trees no more unless you have no money. Back in the day, everybody put candy canes because it was cheap. And I said, well, how big are the candy canes? And they was like, oh, they nice size. And I was like, can we go out to get something? Like Target is still open. And I'm forgetting I'm in the White House, right? Who talks about Target being in the White House? Well, Target for me, as my mom says. And so we laughed about it. And they said, no, we don't have time. We got to get this Christmas tree up. This is the same room that they FLOTUS, First Lady, Obama was coming in to unveil the gingerbread house. And they was like, we gotta hurry up and get it up. So what you need? So I told them everything I need. And they said, how many people you need? And I told them, and they still didn't bring me enough ornaments. Fast forward, I got what I needed. We worked, and then HGTV came in, and I had a couple of showings. And it just was an experience that even to this day, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful. On my way back, they had an event for all the volunteers throughout the White House. And on my way back, I'm so tired because when I tell you we worked, we had to be up like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then we walked over to the White House most of the time. And then we didn't finish too late. So, and I still had a business to run. I still had a business to run, and my business had started picking up at that particular time. The other part I don't intentionally leave out, but I want to mention that I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay for the hotels while I was there. Because as I mentioned, my business was starting to pick back up. And I said, okay, Lord, you brought me here, but I don't know how I'm going to pay for 6.5 nights of hotel. I had 2 nights to cover. I didn't know how I was going to pay for the others. And so I had to put my pride to the side and call family and say, hey, family, I need some help. And my brothers and sisters in New York said, you're not coming home. So they all paid for a night for me to stay. And my mom pitched in, and that's how I stayed. And I tell everybody this story. Don't you dare give up. You just got to keep moving. And so on the train coming back, I stayed for the dinner and everything. And I was just exhausted and I was tired. And one of my sorority sisters called me on the train. And she said, I need to ask you about some strategic planning and stuff. And I was like, okay. And I said, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm on my way back from the White House. Well, I forgot to tell her, don't tell anybody, because nobody knew at that time but my mama. Wasn't thinking, so excited. And by the next morning, I wake up, Facebook is going off, cell phone is going off. Just the world by then knew I had been to the White House. And Miss Andrea had me to prepare. She had me to prepare differently before I left. Not only that, I had applied before and I didn't get accepted. So I tell everybody, just because you get a no the first time doesn't mean that God doesn't have a yes coming. And so she said, this time we're going to prepare different. And I said, okay. She said, we redo your website, all of this, and just a team of ladies. It was a bunch of us that met all the time, and she mentored and coached us, and several others, Lou Myers and a bunch of them. They just coached us, about 5 or 6 of us. And she said, no, you're going to prepare different. And I said, yes, ma'am. And so when I tell you, when I came back, like I said, the phone is ringing. I'm tired. I'm going to my mama's house to get some rest before I head back to Raleigh. And the phone is ringing saying TV stations want to do interviews. And I said, that's why you have a good coach and a mentor in your life. Because I could honestly say then, call the PR person and take care of that and tell me where I'm supposed to be. And I don't say that in a way to be bragging. I just say that in a way that God has us to prepare, and he prepares us for what he's about to release. And he released that thing in me. And I don't even look back. I just keep moving forward, and I share my story, and I constantly mentor and coach other people, other young people, business owners, and let them know, don't you dare give up, because what is meant for you will happen. May not happen in your time, but God always has a way of working things out. And so that was part of my story to the White House, and I've been getting emails lately since, of course, we have Vice President Kamala Harris and President-elect Biden coming in, the people are asking me, "Are you going back?" And I said, "Whatever door God opens for me, I'm ready, and I'm going back to do what He tells me to do." So I'm just excited, and I'm truly blessed.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a great story, and I'm glad you had that opportunity and everything. Precious, I got to ask you: do you and your husband need any interior designing done in your house? And are you ready to hire my good friend here because she's ready to go do the interior designing in your house?
I tell you, the film set, everything, okay? All this. Pastor Hill was over here preaching this whole time. Yes.
Look, that wasn't my sermon. See, I'm doing real good right about now.
Got a whole other sermon going on, but definitely,
Yes.
Precious said she's ready to get her both office and her house to have some interior designing going on. One of the things that I'm oftentimes curious about with our business community, I'd love to hear both of y'all's reflection on this. I wish Stephanie was here because I'd love to hear her perception as well. Is that too often I feel that we get folks that want us to help them out and to get engaged, but they don't want to necessarily give us the reward that we need. And we kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier, Precious and everything. But I've got a good friend, Ray Pascal, and he oftentimes talks about the brain drain, folks that want to use your talent, use your skill sets, but don't necessarily want to give you your reward. So how do you deal with that, Precious? You're a young lady, so I'm thinking that you're one of those people that if they come at you with that attitude, you're like, nope, I don't have to take that assignment because I'm going to make sure that you pay me what I'm worth and everything. But how do you deal with folks when they try to do the brain drain to you? And then I'd also love to hear from Ms. Hill as well. But how do you deal with folks that want to try to use your service but don't necessarily give you the rewards that you deserve?
I will say I've been duped sometimes because of my age, because of my newness to the industry, even just because of my faith. They feel like, you're supposed to just be nice and amicable and empathetic at all times, which is true. However, I'm not going to be a pushover for you to not give me what I'm supposed to have. So there have been some instances where I had to knock on some doors and send some emails and say, hey, this is not free. This is the cost we agreed upon. You pay this cost or we will not move forward with what we need to. And they think also because my name is Precious, I'm a young face, that they can just walk all over me and I'll just accept whatever it is that they give me. But no, I'm educated. I know how to, speak up for myself and do that. And that's my advice for anyone that's new to business. Don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. So many people are like, oh, they're charging $50 for a t-shirt. I can go to Target and get it for $20. Yeah, but if your marketing backs up why you're charging $50 for that t-shirt, then you're charged $50 for that t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely. What about you, Ms. Hill?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was asking you the same questions. Like, how do you deal with folks that want to get your services? And you do so much, whether it's interior designing, whether it's some of your business consulting, whether it's a number of other things. So I'm sure that there are folks that are always trying to get you to give your services, but don't necessarily want to give you the rewards that you deserve.
That is true, and I believe you get what you pay for. We are business. We have businesses, and someone told me, I was working with a church one time, and I said, I will make a donation. I said, no, I won't charge for the services. And he said, no, you charge for what you're worth. And if you choose to make a donation to the church, you do that outside of what you're doing. And that stuck with me because I work with a lot of churches, and it stuck with me. He said, you have to eat too, and you can't drive up and get his church name. And he says, so you get paid for what you're worth. And then if you make that donation, then you made a donation in your name. And that's the difference. And people have to understand we own businesses. If we don't eat, if we don't work, we don't eat, basically, right? We don't work, we don't eat. And we know what the Bible says about working and eating, okay?
mm-hmm.
Now, yes, because faith-based people are often misunderstood, but also God gives us all wisdom. And he said, be wise and pray and ask for the right clients. And then when I show you what to do, then you do the right thing. So we got to have contracts in place. I had always have used contracts when I started out because I would trust people. And, my heart would say, oh, I can trust so-and-so. And it was usually the ones that I thought I could trust was the ones that I learned the hard lesson. And God said, and didn't I tell you to use a contract? Because you know Johnny, but Johnny ain't gonna take care of you. You need to eat. So we just have to be careful. We have to use godly wisdom in our business. And put those resources in place to help us. And if you know you struggle with collecting your money, then that means you put a resource in place that handles your money for you. You put an accounting team that'll go after your money and all of that. So it's all about putting the right people in place, process, and everything, so that where you are weak, you have somebody, and you have somebody to chase down what you need, and you don't have to do it.
Now, that makes a lot of sense, and that even comes back to what both of y'all are saying. But even coming back to the art community, Precious, I know too often that I hear artists that don't understand that it's called show business for a reason. They're real good at the show part. They're not necessarily good at the business part. But at the same time, whether they're going to their dental appointment, going to their optometrist, or going to any other service, their plumber or whatever, they have no problem with paying those people. But then they don't necessarily want to pay the artist what the artist is worth as well, because artists also have to eat, and artists also have to spend a lot of time on their craft, whether that's something that might be in a lot of people's minds a more complex craft like filmmaking and music, or something that might be in some people's mind a little bit of a lighter craft. But I don't know any craft in the arts that doesn't have some disciplines of science and other things that make it a difficult field, whether that's art, whether that's camera work, or a number of the others. But I do sometimes feel that folks feel that they can get those skills because sometimes there are also skills that people do as a hobby. But just because you do it as a hobby don't mean that you're good at it professionally, because like I said, you can pick up a camera all day long and take camera pictures, even pictures with your lovely phone and everything, but those pictures aren't necessarily going to be the same as a professional photographer. So if you're going to get a professional photographer, pay what a professional photographer would get, just like you would pay with your plumber. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I just espoused and everything, Precious, because I do think that sometimes people feel that certain skills, like the skills of a photographer, like the skills of a podcaster, are skills that are things that the common person can do, and therefore they don't necessarily have to pay you for it.
People think with the ease of something like a StreamYard or YouTube University that they can just kind of just pick up and just learn and do. While some of that is true, you need to have some kind of natural inclination to these things in order to be successful and be professional in these fields. There's a lot of things you need to learn about how you stand. A lot of people don't know when you're a camera person, the way you stand, you can't lock your knees, because if you lock your knees, the air doesn't get through and you can pass out and damage equipment as well as hurt yourself. And see, those amateurs, that's something they're not going to know. The lighting, how the light reflects in the room versus natural versus artificial, the time of day. Even as we've been sitting here, the lighting has changed since we've been recording. So making sure that you have it set so it can be transitional, even though you're going to be on for a while. Those are some things that people don't think about because they haven't studied it, or they haven't looked at it for themselves to kind of learn, or even spoken to other people who do it to learn about it. So while it may be somebody's hobby, if they're taking it seriously, it is a profession. It's something that's on the side. What they're doing full time is paying for them to be able to do that on the side. So don't disrespect their talent. Don't disrespect their work by your inability to pay them or your inability to take them seriously.
Yeah, definitely agree
And
with
I
you on
did
that.
the same thing.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. One of the things we had talked about earlier before you got here, Ms. Hill, and everything was, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, was the importance of Kamala in the world and everything. So definitely this is an international platform on IBM TV, but I'd love to hear your perception of what this election of Kamala means to you as a Black woman, as a entrepreneur, as a number of other things. Y'all might even share the same sorority, since I know what sorority she's in, but I don't know which one you're in. So like I said, if you would just share your reflections on what this election means to you of this historical figure.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, we are sorority sisters, actually. And so this is a great opportunity and a great time for the country as a whole. It is time for a shift. And God has made that shift. And He woke us up. He woke us up during the last 4 years. And I work for Congressman Butterfield as his campaign manager. And what I learned and heard, and I told Congressman Butterfield, you're gonna hear me say this a lot because I learned a lot riding in the car. But one thing he often says is during the Obama administration, we slept, we celebrated and we celebrated and we celebrated, but we didn't stay on it. And so we allowed 4 years of something different. And God woke us up and say, okay, I had to take y'all back for a minute for you to realize you got to stay on it. You cannot sleep through this. And when the announcement came out that Biden had won and Kamala was VP, I was at church. We had a praise fest at church. And I was about to get up to preach. It had a bunch of us preaching that particular day. And I was reminded of this very statement. We cannot sleep again. Yes, they won, but we still have a whole lot of work to do. If this election didn't teach us anything, then we got bigger issues. But it should have taught us, and this year, between the pandemic and the racial injustice, that work still has to be done and we still have to fight the good fight, as Congressman Lewis stated, and I had a chance to meet him also. We still have to fight the good fight. And we can't sit back and just celebrate the pink and green and whatever. We can't spend the next 3 to 4 months celebrating. We need to still be working, and we got to work harder than ever because they're determined that it's going to be a short-term stay for them. But if we fight like we did this election and all come out, when the last 4 years, everybody didn't come out. When President Obama was in office, we all came out and we celebrated, and then we went home and we didn't do nothing for 4 years. We can't do that on this one because they're waiting for us. So we got to go hard the next immediately and the next 4 years. So it's a lot of work to do. I'm not one that says, everybody else got to work. No, I'm rolling my hands up too and saying, okay, what I need to do here, how can I influence, young people? How can I influence people in general that this is a serious time, a serious election, and a serious next 4 years. And we all got to get in this fight together, and we got to fight the good fight because change starts at home first, and then it goes out. And if you're not willing to be the change agent, get out of the way, find somebody else that can help. But just realize, and I tell this to my nieces and nephews, look, you can't say, oh, well, this is just, it needs to be this and it needs to be that. No, don't talk to me unless you're willing to get out there and move your feet and take action, because it will impact you short term and long term. And I actually spent 3 hours one Sunday morning breaking it down for my nephew who's 21 years old. And he was like, well, Carnella, I need to vote for Trump because this, that, and the other. And I said, well, let me break this down since you don't completely understand why it is important that you shift your mindset and think about what I'm telling you. And when I laid it all out, he said, I never saw it that way. We got to have these hard conversations with the young people, whether we like it or not, and then continue to show them why it's important to move in the right direction.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I heard said on one of my other podcasts that was actually earlier today was there was a group of theater people. They were doing a theater piece, I should say, called Turning 15 on the Road to Freedom. And it's about the young 15 and teenagers that were involved in the March on Selma and all of that. And one of the things that we were reflecting on is the fact that so many of the struggles that kids were involved in in that era, which is the 60s. We're talking about even before Precious was born and everything, are still some of the same things that are going on now. I'm even thinking about Reverend Barber and the fact that he's getting ready to relaunch and has relaunched the Poor People's Campaign, which was done in the 60s. So how do we get folks to understand that it's a long road and it might seem like it's never ending road, because these are struggles we've been doing for 50 or 60 years, if not longer, but they still are the same struggle. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Ms. Hill, and then I'd love to hear the young people's perception from Precious, because it does seem like it's a fight that even her parents were involved in. I would even argue her grandparents and great grandparents, but this is something that's been going on for a while. So why do we still have this same battle that's been going on for decades, if not centuries?
Are you reading all my papers that I keep having to do over at Duke University? One of my classes, Womanist Theology, we had to read the book, the James Cone, The Cross and the Lynching Tree.
Right.
And I read that book, and about 2 weeks later, I had a chance to go down to Alabama, Montgomery. And I spoke on a panel, and I talked about the cross and the lynching tree and why it's still important. And in my group discussion in class, we had a mixed group, and we shared our comments. And as a Black woman, I understand why I can't stop fighting. I understand why the impact that I can make will affect Precious and impact to my nephews and my nieces and even my younger nieces and nephews. I don't have kids, but it's a generational type work that we have to do. And so during that time down in Montgomery, it was a lot of young people. And I shared with them, one of the sections I read was about Mary, Don't You Weep. And it was about the woman in the book. And it was why she had to continue to stay strong for her husband. And she had to fight for her husband. And it also talked about, Mary Lou Hamer. And it also talked about Ida Turner. And they all fought for a reason, because there was times where their husbands couldn't fight, or their husbands was no longer there. So they had to fight for the next generation. And that's where we are now. We have to fight for the next generation, and actually 2 to 3 generations down the line. And so as I'm reading in divinity school and all these books, and when the George Floyd murder happened, I was in one of my classes and I was frustrated. And I was really just, I had to remind myself to be angry and sin not. And I said, okay, Lord, what you want me to do with this? Well, I put you here for a reason. And we almost understand what is our reason in life and what is our purpose. And then what are we going to do to help the next person? But not just Black Lives Matter. Don't get me wrong. Yes, I'm the one that says, yeah, Black Lives Matter, because it's going to affect my nieces and nephews and my family and everybody. Also, I want you to understand that we can have a simple conversation and you not call me an angry Black woman. Mm-hmm. And I used to get that a lot when I was in the corporate world, because a lot of times I was the only Black woman in a room with a bunch of white men. And so I had to learn how to carry myself. And Miss Harris and all of them taught us, and my school teachers and all of those, they taught us as women how to carry ourselves. And I shared that in my class. I said, but my race also teaches the Black men what to do. And, put your hands on the dash when you're driving. Don't do this. Don't look too quick. I tell my nephew when he goes out. And so we have to continue to educate. Mm. If we don't continue to work to make this change happen, it may not happen today. It may not happen tomorrow. I can't say when it's going to happen. But little by little, the shift is occurring. And, If we think about from Martin Luther King's time, Dr. Martin Luther King's time to Congressman Lewis' time to, and that is even recent. My heart hurts for George Floyd's family, but I believe God put him and had him to go through that for a reason. My heart hurts for Ahmaud Arbery. My heart hurts for Breonna Taylor. And God used them. God may use any one of us at any particular time. We just got to be ready. And we got to continue to move and help somebody else. But we also got to share the story. We can't stop talking about lynching. We can't stop talking about slavery. All of those work to where we are being taken and where we are going. And you can't forget the past. Too often we say, well, let the past be the past. No, the past will help shapes the future. And so will people jump on board? Will white people jump on board? Maybe not, but some of them are shameful of their family's past. But we got to have that conversation with them and say, okay, but let's move forward. And this is how we move forward. And I appreciate everything and Reverend Barbara does and continue to do, because I have been in those areas where he's been there, and I've seen the crowd, and I say, some of them get it. And maybe it was those conversations, those hard conversations, but we still got to keep educating, and we still got to keep talking, and we got to still put the word out there for Precious and everybody else with Precious.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. Love to hear Precious' thoughts about that as well, because one of the things that I've noticed is that in my mind, it seems that we've always had youth leadership, but it seems like we're having even more youth leadership now. And the youth leaders that I'm seeing seem to be very more open to diversity. Like I'm seeing a lot of the youth leaders that are definitely engaged and encouraged by some of their Hispanic peers. They might come out of the African American community, but they're working with the dreamers, or they're working with the people out of the trans community, or they're working with people out of the gay rights community. And I'm seeing that is something that we might have tried to have happen with Jesse Jackson when he was trying to have some of his movements in terms of the Rainbow Coalition, and we might have seen it in some other folks. But the leaders of Black Lives Matter and a number of the other movements, whether it's Me Too or others, seem to be more inclusive, particularly on the progressive side. At least that's what I feel. And I was wondering if you feel the same way, Precious, and how you feel the movement is going, because I do find it to be very youth-led.
I agree. I think, well, currently right now on this earth, we have the silent generation, which is like my grandparents' generation. After that, we have the boomers. After that, we have Generation X. We have millennials, which is, I fit into that realm. And then after that, you have centennials, which they often get grouped in with us, but they're not us. That's Tide Pod experimenting kind. And then after them, you have Alpha, the young kids coming up, and then the generation that's going to be born after that. So there's several different generations, and each one of them work differently in forms of activism and the movement. And I think one of the more important things is to realize the respect in which each one individually reacts and moves within the movement. One of the cool things that happened, because everything is so digital, the newer generations, the younger ones, mine included, are able to reach out in different ways. I don't know if you remember during the Trump rally, when he thought he had all these tickets and he did not, it was because the K-pop fans went in and intercepted those tickets, and they had no idea. They purchased 3,500 and he had an empty arena. When they were down in Dallas beating people, they intercepted the cameras to let people know, hey, you can't go after this person. You can't go after that person. When they hashtag white pride, they intercepted that hashtag so that way they could not promote racism. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but they're just happening in different ways that are not traditional, and sometimes are overlooked but are not seen because it's not the traditional route of activism. So I will say that there's a lot happening. I do think a lot more can happen. I think especially with George Floyd, if you think about it, with COVID forced all of us to be home. There's no distraction of going to the movies, going to concerts, traveling. You have to stay home. And this man died in front of everybody that had to stay home. And when you think about the disrespect of in the middle of a global pandemic in which the main symptom is not being able to breathe. This man died because he could not breathe because another human being put his knee in this human being's neck in the middle of a pandemic that we can't help, but you could help this man. How disrespectful is that? And I think that's what resonated with everybody because there was literally nothing done wrong. He didn't even do what they said the store called for. The store was like, we didn't even talk about him. There was nothing that people can pinpoint and say, he should have done this, he should have done that, he should have, nothing. There was no excuse. So it forced people to sit and think like, wow, this is really happening. What they said is true. I had the privilege to go study abroad in Prague back in 2016. And there I met women. It was a women in leadership program. And I met women from all over the globe. One of my friends, Georgia, is from Australia. And we sat down and we talked about the US and how they saw the US. And they saw it as one of the best places in the world. And I'm like, okay, but this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. And she couldn't believe it. I said, yeah, because we live in a dome. What they show you is what they want to show you. When we have to find you guys' news, we have to physically go look for your news because we're not fed your news. And the same for you. And most recently, she saw what was going on. She said, wow, I remember when we had this conversation. And now I'm actually seeing what you were talking about. So I agree with you, Ms. Hill, when you were talking about how George Floyd was used for a bigger platform because in Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and unfortunately, the line of names that have come since are essentially reaching out to the world in a different way in which we have never been able to before. And also speaking through a generation that was never able to speak it before, but are now able to use the new age digital era to help reach out to other people.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said that because one of the shows that we have here on the IBM TV network is a show called Mind's Closet. And it's actually done by a guy, we call him Brother Mike because many of us can, I hate to say this, but many of us can't pronounce his name and everything. So he kind of like goes by a colloquialism kind of name and everything. So we actually have him involved in all of that. So, and we just call him Brother Mike, but he's been talking about the fact that even in Nigeria, they're having their own version of Black Lives Matter because they've had a lot of things going around police kind of oppression. But in their case, because in our case, it's police of both colors, both black and white police that are targeting our black youth in a lot of ways and everything. Whereas there's more of a, in my mind, a class issue and maybe a tribal issue because of a caste system kind of thing that's going on. But it's still the same concept of what goes on when you have these kind of like misconstrued and misuse of police power. So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on the importance of Black Lives Matter and the importance of Black Lives Matter on a global kind of community. Because I've even heard people, you talked about having a friend in Australia that have talked about the fact that there's some of those kind of things that have happened in Australia with the Aborigines and things along that line. And of course, we know about apartheid in South Africa historically, and now there's these things that are happening in their police force now. But I was just wondering if you could talk about that, and then I'd love to hear from Ms. Hill about that as well. But I do think that kind of the police matter kind of things is a global issue.
Black Lives Matter is a fact. I mean, they do. If you believe all lives matter, then you're saying that Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
I don't know if people think they needed to add the 2 at the end of that, or Black Lives also matter. I don't know what people need to make them feel better about that statement, but there is nothing wrong with saying that or believing it or wearing it or promoting it because it's true. And those people who think that it's saying something else, that it's just the same people that have the issue with Black pride. It's not saying that because I'm proud to be Black that I'm not okay with you being white. That's not the same. Just saying that even though the world tells me I shouldn't be, I am proud to be Black. And when people need to sit and realize what the real problem is, why do they have a problem with that statement? Blue lives matter. There are no such thing as blue lives. You go home, you take off your uniform, and unless you tell somebody, nobody knows you're a cop. Right. I go outside, no matter what I'm wearing, you know that I'm a Black woman, or at least have some Black in me somewhere. So rationally, it does not make sense. And a lot of people that are in my age range think the same way, like, why is this even a problem that we have to fight basic human rights? If you believe that all of us are created equal, why is this a problem? But then again, we live in a country in which, even though all of us are created equal, we were considered 3/5 of a man. So I liken it to, I don't know if you all have seen the Black Panther film. I liken it to T'Challa and Killmonger. Killmonger represented essentially Africa. Actually, Killmonger represented here as Black Americans, and T'Challa represented Africa. And the pain in their exchanges in the film, Killmonger saying, "You left me. You left me alone. I have no identity because you left me. Why didn't you come get me?" That speaks to the silence in which Black Americans, we don't have a culture. We've created our culture. But when you think about the nuances of language, of what we wear, how we speak, how we eat, even how we eat, what we had to derive is what's killing us as a people. So what's native to us, our health, how we just live, all of that was stripped from us. And to be Black in America is also some part of insanity, because you have to keep that in the back of your mind while still trying to act normal, because there's years and years of trauma that has been put upon our people, and there's no one talking about it. We're just supposed to go around like it's normal. On that same trip, when I went to Prague, they were talking about where their families were from. We were actually on the bus going to Vienna because we went to the UN. Awesome trip. I'll tell y'all about another time. But we're sitting on the bus and they're talking about ancestors, and they're like, "Hey, Precious, where are yours from?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And they're like, "Well, why don't you know?" I said, "Well, there was this thing called slavery, and that kind of messed things up for us." And they were like, "Oh," because people don't think about it because it's not in the forefront. Like, thinking it's just his history. It's just in the books. Like, no. My great grandmother was born in 1906. Her parents were slaves. She actually grew up as one as well. So that's how, it's not far removed. Like, it just happened. But people think because it's history, it's no longer relevant. And because they think the Civil Rights Act was passed and women can vote and all this stuff, that those fights are no longer relevant because we're in 2020 and it's not relevant anymore. No, it just happened. So when we get back to the Black Lives Matter movement, that's why it's so important, because it seems like everybody needs to be reminded of that.
Speaking of folks need to be reminded of stuff, one of our founders, Kim Calhoun, just came in and made a comment, which was that she said, "Be a woman who has fought this as an engineer since 1982, not black or white, but think women, because your voice don't matter." So she was definitely saying that she could relate to a lot of what you've been thinking, because she also added, "You think being black doesn't matter, but it's also some of the female issues." So she was also speaking to what me and you and Stephanie have been talking about earlier, about the fact of some of the oppressions that go on as being a female in society as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about some of the things. And she's one of the founders of IBM TV, along with Nick Valveda.
Yes, Black lives do matter. We had to start pulling together as a race. Even you think about during the lynching, Blacks had to pull together during the lynching because not everybody stood with us. And so then we had slavery. Blacks had to pull together because not everybody was with us. Black Lives Matter is the same thing. We got to pull together so that we can fight the good fight. And so it's no different than another race pulling together. When we're mistreated, then we're all mistreated. And so when Blacks are mistreated, then that means everybody is feeling the impact. And what I remember from the George Floyd day, and I'm in class, and my instructor talked about this a week later. She said, she apologized. She said, for white privilege. She said, because I didn't say anything to anybody. I went on with class that day as if everything was okay. And many of y'all were hurting.
Wow.
If we don't ever have the conversation, if we don't ever acknowledge it, then that hurt continues to go on and on. So yes, we need to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. And I know Kimberly has actually popped in. I didn't know if she was going to pop in, but I was going to have her pop in and join us and everything. But Kimberly is here. And like I said, she is one of the founders of the network and definitely does a lot around unity. By the way, Miss Hill, you will be glad to know that she is a big fan and wants to get him on the network of Reverend Barber. So Miss Hill is a big fan of Reverend Barber, and I know that you have worked with Reverend Barber. So Kim, Miss Hill has actually worked on the whole platform with Reverend Barber and is a big time supporter of Reverend Barber and has actually had the privilege of being involved in his staff. So she's involved with Reverend Barber's staff, and I know that you want to get Reverend Barber here on the platform at some point.
Well, I want to make a correction. I wasn't on his staff, but I worked for Congressman Butterfield, and they, work together
Right.
in North Carolina a lot. So, and one of my good friends is on his staff now. So that's how I know Reverend Barber from all the work that he has done. And he's from Goldsboro. I'm from Wilson, North Carolina. And so I have had that privilege of meeting him several times and know all the work that he does.
Take that credit. Let me tell you something. As a woman, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you're black, white. Well, you know what? Gender choice is different because they have no choice in North Carolina. All right. But I want to tell you what. As a woman, we have no choice. I have worked in this industry for years. I thought I could change things. And some women have. I am blessed. I have the honor. And the privilege of a dream happening that I could have never, a dream ever happened. I got to speak at North Carolina's commencement exercises of 2018. Okay. I'm an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an engineer since 1982. And that's not easy.
Right.
Not long after that, I was asked, would you sit on our board? Because there's like 80% women who drop out of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Not just US, globally.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you why. I can tell you right off the bat why. I've been in this since 1982. I've been a success, right? And I have a book. And one person who fully read it, a multi-millionaire, who said, this was the best book I ever read. And I want to order 100 for my board of advisors. Because it's not just about success.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, and not just about women in success or minorities in success. It's about success.
Right.
Here. Mm-hmm. This is what I spoke about at North Carolina State University's commencement exercise. It's about what you have here and here.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't have this or this, you have nothing. You have nothing because you have to perceive. Mm. And at the end of the day, this is what I love about Mark. Oh my God. Mark's like my Batman, right? It's like, but he gets it. He knows what it takes to succeed, what we have to do to connect and unify. One thing is I am not politically connected. I don't like either party. I always preach, you know what? Get rid of the parties. We don't need party favors. But yet we all, we all follow a party. Drink the Kool-Aid. This is what I would say. Drink the Kool-Aid. We all follow the party. But you know what? They do that on purpose. These guys, you have to watch our shows. I'm part of IBM TV, and Nick's going to kill me right now. But I'm part of it. But the top 1% control everything of this country. Mm-hmm. Everything. It controls what you're educated with. Mm-hmm. All right. How many people get financial literacy? Yeah. So one of the reasons why I joined Nick was he wanted to teach financial literacy. But you know what? The networks, they only do bleed if you lead. You know what? We don't want to teach the people how to become financial literate. They don't want to teach it. Mm-hmm. So let me tell you something. The greatest gap between sustainability and poverty is what?
Money.
No, it's not money. It's financial literacy. Mm-hmm. What to do with it.
Yes, I'll say that. Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
it's what you do. So, how many NFL players do you know went bankrupt after they got their money?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Professional athletes go bankrupt. Why?
Right.
They don't know what to do with their money. That's how they separated you from them. All right, let's go back to Lincoln. Let's go all the way back to Lincoln. Everybody thought he was great. Oh my God, this president that wanted to free slaves. But you guys know he had slaves.
Mm.
All right. The difference is he said that they weren't slaves, they just worked for him. They worked for him under a debt.
Yeah.
You guys don't know this. I do my homework. I research. I do history. And I'm put down in my place by the white man and by the top 1%. But Nick puts up with me. So hear me out. The slaves had an opportunity, but instead there were laws put in place when Lincoln sat there and said, "We're going to free the slaves, free the slaves." Did he do any laws that were in your favor? Go look at the laws. Mark, I preach on this.
Right.
What do I preach on, Mark?
The fact that there were no laws that were placed in there and everything, that there was no real policies.
And enforcement. Policies and enforcement, people. Okay? So you can sit there and oil the wheel that's squeaking. All right? There's policies and enforcement, and these rich men know this. All right? So let me tell you something. There was no policies put in place for you to own land. Was there? No. Okay, Lincoln was in charge. Did he put in place that you can own land? No, he did not.
Yeah.
So even my own family puts me down. In fact, I am disowned by half of them because I bring this up. I bring this crap up. I bring all the crap up. Okay? And I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry to bring this up on your show. Let me tell you something. Policies. That's where it's at. If you want to change things for your benefit, you make the policies. If you only make the policies, you make them enforce them for your rights. So Lincoln goes, blacks need to be free. We need to do a civil war on this. But you don't really know what the real civil war is about. I do. So at the end of the day, did he put in there you can own land? Did he? Did he, Mark?
Nope. No land.
No, he didn't. What was it? 40 mules in an acre?
40 acres.
Let me tell you something. There were several generals that put up a fight for you guys and said, hey, I don't want to do this anymore unless the black people can own land. You know what he told them? Do you have any idea?
Mm-mm.
Man, you idolized? No.
I got a question. Why wouldn't we know this information? And who said we idolize Lincoln?
Why don't you to read the policies?
Oh,
no, that's what I'm asking.
Have you ever read the policies?
Who said we don't know anything about this?
Right, exactly. I'm just listening because sometimes
I'm just listening. Yeah.
Have you ever,
just listening.
let me ask you this. Have you ever read the policies? Do you ever read the policies? No, you don't. So, when McCrory came in to do the let's save the women from, the bathroom bill, did y'all read the policies or were you enforcing it? I'm asking you. Were you enforcing his policies or did you read them?
I'm going to listen to you since you're teaching us today. So I'm just going
to No, girl. Were you enforcing him? Were you enforcing him? Both of you got quiet. So let me tell you. Let me tell you about this. Okay, first off, I have a very rare spinal disease. All right. And when I cannot do things, I do a lot of reading. All right. I read a lot. But at the end of the day, his policies, they were not to enforce anything to protect women. But why do I know this? Because I actually had a real policy to protect women. I had a real policy, not only a real policy, but a real invention. A real invention, which hopefully we'll launch maybe in a year or two, to protect women from what? Criminals. What's the biggest crime that women face every day? Quiet crickets. Okay. Domestic violence. Domestic violence is one of the biggest crimes we face every day. 12 million female victims a year, 24 children, 6 million men. Okay. Do we do anything about it? No, we don't. Why? 12 million. Do you know what that is a minute? 26. Yeah, I'm an engineer. 26. And somebody questioned me this at the, big organization we have at NIST. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, do the math. So they took out the calculator 3 times. 3 times. So let me tell you, Black lives, you might think not matter. Women lives don't. Women lives don't matter. Never have. Go to Africa. Women lives don't matter. All right. Mark cares. That's the reason why he lets me in. Women lives matter. I believe Black lives matter. I believe every freaking life matters. That's who I am. I believe every life matters. Because I gave birth to a life. And if I were Mary, Mother of Jesus, I would believe that too. Whatever religion you are. I believe every life matters. But you know what? We all sit there and go, and you know what? You might not think that. But I'm going to tell you right now, when I go do a FBO, a federal bid organization for jobs, women don't matter. Women do not matter.
Okay,
Obama,
we need to change
Kim,
that.
Kim, I
women-
gotta get ready to break up because I got a few more minutes.
Yeah, we have to change that because we can't just sit here and say, yeah, we know women lives don't matter, but that shift is occurring and it's occurring now. And it's up to us to continue to do something about it. So I'm not going to, I can't sit here and just say women don't matter. Women are changing the face of the universe and we all have to get on board. Black Lives Matter. It is a reason. It is not.
I believe that too.
And so
I believe that too.
I'm gonna have to wrap this up. I got another call going on.
Yeah, hold on a second. I've got to get ready to wrap up because I actually got ready to do my other podcast and everything. But one of the things I was going to ask everybody, and then I've got to wrap up because I got to do my 7:00 show with our good friend Dean and everything, which is my standard podcast. But one of the things that I had done earlier, and we had Stephanie on earlier and everything, who was definitely involved with a lot of the community and everything. So she's involved with engineering and all of that. But one of the things I try to do toward the end of the show is give everybody a chance for their thoughts of positivity and their thoughts that they would like to share with the world, because it is a global network and all of that. So that's how I'm going to end the show and everything, is trying to give folks to give an opportunity to share some of their positivity and all of that. And I do apologize for that and everything, but definitely I would love to hear both of your thoughts on what kind of words of encouragement you would like to give to the world. Because like I said, I do know that there's some folks that watch us from Australia, from South Africa, from England, from all parts of the globe. And I did love the fact that Stephanie earlier was talking about what's going on with STEM and all of that. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
I think, Pastor Hill, I'm already going to call you because that's what you are. But I think we in agreement because we in the same realm. We know what that was. We battle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. So that's exactly what that was, because we was on here talking about stuff that was reaching people, that was saying things. And so that's what happened. And I'm going to just leave it at that. But as far as positivity, don't ever think that you don't matter.
Right.
Don't ever say that you don't matter. Don't ever say that somebody else doesn't matter. No, that's not it. That's negativity. Positivity is in spite of what the world tells me, in spite of how they treat me, in spite of what I'm not allowed into, I am who I am and I am whose I am. And I have been called because he qualified me. So I will step into every room that is set aside for me and I will bring who I need to bring and influence who I need to influence. Point blank, period. That's what I have to say.
Right.
Reverend
Uh,
Neal.
I'll sum it up this way is you are important. I don't care what color skin you are, but I'm talking to my Black sisters and my brothers. You are important. You can do whatever you want to do. Too often it is saying when we walk in a room, you can't do this and you are not qualified. That is a lie, and the devil is a lie. And so you can do whatever you want to do and what God has called you to do. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't matter. Don't let anybody tell you that, oh, as a woman, I wrote an article last week that'll come out in January. What would I tell a woman that's a Black woman that is struggling? And I would tell her, you can do it. You fight for your husband. You fight for your man. Black women has fought for the longest because they held the Black man down. Well, I'm telling my sisters and my brothers, you keep on fighting, you keep standing up, and you can be everything God intended you for you to be. And that is what it is.
Definitely would agree with that, and definitely I think that that's a very powerful message that you just gave and everything. I know that there's a Sonny Slaughter, who's a friend of mine, has been on Sri Srinivasan's show, and he's involved in some things down on the Facebook Live, and has some ties to the New York Times and all of that. And they oftentimes talk about what it means to be a true ally, and they were actually referring to like the Indian Americans and the Latin Americans and all of that. So this is how I really want to end everything and wrap everything up. In y'all's mind, what does it mean to be a true ally, and how should an ally act? So that's how I'm going to end the show. How should an ally act, and definitely what does it mean in your mind to be a true ally?
Whew. To be a true ally is to be empathetic, is to not say, I don't see color. Because when you say, I don't see color, you negate all the experiences of those who are of color experience. When you say that, you say, I don't see color, so your life is the same as mine. So all these disparities that you say are not happening because it's not possible because you have the same experience as I do, which that is not true. God made us all different for a reason, and we need to respect that, and we need to learn from each other. And at the same time, unite with our similarities and learn the differences. That's what a true ally does. Unite for the similarities and learn the differences.
I think you read one of my papers, Precious. I'm loving you, my dear. You read one of my papers. You're absolutely right. When people say, I don't see color, or you go over and say, but I have friends that are Black. Come on. Come on. That's one of my pet peeves. Come on. You don't have to do that. God made us each different for a reason. You cannot ignore the color of my skin. You cannot ignore the color of my skin. Do you got blinders on? And it's time to take the blinders off. I am Black for a reason. Just like God made Asian people and Hispanic people, He made us all for a reason. And each one of us are unique for a reason because we add to a community as a whole. And so embrace that I am different, and it is well. Just like I embrace who you are, and I don't take that away. So let's stop ignoring Black Lives Matter. Let's stop ignoring that Black women don't matter. Let's stop ignoring and saying people don't care about women. Well, then change it. Change it. Because I know me and being in corporate America now, owning a business for years, I'm going to pull the next woman up, whether she's Black or white. I'm going to pull the next woman up, because that's what my godly duty is to do first. is to help the next person. And so, thank you, Kamala. I'm glad you show the women that
Yes.
we're going to show the world that the women do matter.
Yes.
I'm going to leave
I
that alone.
appreciate both of you for being on and everything. I definitely appreciate both of you for being on. I appreciate Stephanie for being on earlier. So definitely great conversation. I'm always welcome to come back anytime because, like I said, I do these shows on a regular basis. And Precious, you stayed with me the whole time. So I definitely am glad that you were able to stick around for the whole 3 hours and all of that. So definitely know that both of you are welcome back on this platform because I do 3 shows here as well as on my regular podcast, which I do from 7 to 9 on Blog Talk Radio, which is more of the audio version. But do know that there are the variety of platforms, and I'll be talking to my friend Tree and some of others about even getting you on their platforms as well. So I definitely found y'all to be great conversationalists and glad to have both of you here engaged with this wonderful conversation that we're having that touched on so many issues about us developing things in science, us talking about Black Lives Matter, us talking about Me Too movement, the role of youth in society, and a number of other things that we touched on. So definitely glad to have both you, Miss Hill, and you, Precious, to be my guest on this particular afternoon. So thank you, and thanks Stephanie Espy, who joined us earlier and actually shared that she also comes out of the field of engineering and is trying to get more women and women of color involved in engineering. That's actually what she was talking about in the early part of the show, as Precious knows as well. So definitely glad to have both of you on and look forward to having more conversations with you in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Wonderful show.
Yes. Well, that's going to wrap up our show here on Mullings Music and Memories. We actually didn't get to any music this time, but that's all right. Sometimes we get so engaged in conversation that we don't have that much going on the music side. But we always have great Mullings, and that's just another way of saying thoughts and thought-provoking things. And of course, we did share some memories with both Precious and Miss Hill, as well as Stephanie, sharing some of their experiences of both the past and things that they have gone through, whether that was Miss Hill having that experience in the White House and doing the decorating there, whether that was Miss Espy talking about some of the things that she learned, even trying to fix those automobiles with her dad and everything, or some of the health issues that Precious has gone through as well, because she has also had to fight a lot of health issues, even at a very young age in her 30s. And we even explored a little bit about that as well. So I want to thank all of my guests for being on and having this great conversation. And I look forward to having another exciting conversation on Wednesday afternoon when we'll have the online dinner party and we'll have at least 2 mystery guests from the world of history. I've heard people referencing Ida Wells and others, so who knows who my mystery guests might be. I'll have to do some research and decide who it'll be, because there's usually one person that's national and one person that is international. And of course, that just means that I throw out some clues about who they are and then put up a picture at the end of the show. But y'all have to guess who the mystery guests are in addition to our regular guests. And I know we'll have some folks out of the world of activism and out of the field of the arts. So looking forward to that. And I'm getting to jump on my next call, which is my 3rd podcast, because I just have too much fun doing podcasts on Monday afternoon. So I've got a 3rd one to do right now, and I'm going to jump on that call. So that being said, we're going to wrap up this edition of Mullings Music and Memories.